Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. Today is going to be a pretty long one. And by a pretty long one, I mean a holy crap, this is going to be a long one. There's... whew. Okay. Where do I even begin? We've got, as you can see on the topics list, we've got a bunch... We actually had some news. We had the Sony showcase, which is cool. We've had a lawsuit come through. There's the music for the FF4 Remaster, which I need to listen to live. I need to tell you what's going on with me in the show. Also something with Stellaris. I think that's it. Looking at my notes here. Yeah, I got a lot of notes. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I also just realized I should probably actually pull out this. Is that it? No, hang on. Is this it? This is it. Okay, here we go. Make sure I have the right copy here. My goodness. I do hope this week has been treating you well. As a fresh reminder, we will be coming back to normal streaming this coming Tuesday. That's 2 days from now. That'll be Quest 64. I still haven't done the hardware tests on that because I haven't had time. I'm still trying to play catch-up with everything and all the work I have to do. But I'm working on it. I'm getting there. I've had so much work to do. I'd say you have no idea, and you probably don't, in all honesty, but, you know, it's sorry, give me 1 second. I'm trying to set this up. As I meant to do before I hit go. Like, I didn't space so much as I'm just a colossal moron, so take it that what you will. There we go. Okay. Show news. Let's start with that. First and foremost, my folks visited. I think I mentioned that. That was one of the primary reasons. Indeed, the primary reason for taking last week off. And by their request, with their permission, I'm going to show a picture of the group who visited here. So that's obviously you can see me, and I don't know. I think the picture turned out well. I think it turned out well. But yes, that's Lore Dad on the far right there, and that's Lore Stepmom in the middle. She and I actually debated this, what we should call her on camera, and we never really came up with anything. And actually, you could probably tell that that's me photoshopped on there. I don't mean the face. I mean, that's actually just a picture of them, and then a picture of me, and I combined the two. But, I'm actually taller than that. I'm a good 5 or 6 inches over Dad, so... But at that point, it was getting ridiculous because I was so much taller that it was throwing off the balance of the picture, and you couldn't even see her face, so I just kind of lowered me a bit. Like I said, this was photoshopped in. But anyways, we were trying to do the hands thing. I was explaining the hands reference to them, and they're like, oh, we should totally do the hands. So you can't see hers. She's doing the hands out, and he's doing the hands in, and I'm doing the hands out. It was a good visit. Everything was cool. They gave me a lot of weird random stuff, including, I thought I had it here to show off, but I obviously don't, so never mind. Doesn't matter. So you're probably wondering what's going on with the medicals thing, too, so I'll go ahead and tell you about that. So I did go in Friday. I guess I'll run you through the story here. So I go in Friday, and check in, pay for the visit up front, because it's me. And I'm all ready to go, and everything's cool. Everything's ready. And then nurse comes in, like, 3 minutes later, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Because I don't know about you all, one of the things I hate most about going to any medical thing ever is just sitting there in the waiting area. I actually, no joke, I actually grabbed several mobile games for the first time in, I think, years at this point. At the very least months, just so I'd have something to do. Just so I'd be like, okay, I've got something I can do while I sit here and wait. I actually ended up getting work done, but let's ignore that. But she came out immediately, and I'm like, sweet, awesome. I'll go in, and I'll get everything checked out, and we talked through it. I gave her the full rundown. I knew what I was talking about, and actually knew how to use medical terminology, so she figured out what I wanted very quickly and very easily, jotted down everything on the charts, left, and then I sat there in the examination room and I timed it, 56 minutes. Now, for those of you who don't understand why I am so about this, you're supposed to have your phone off when you're actually in the medical areas. for various good reasons. You know, there are legitimate and good reasons to do that. So I couldn't do anything on the phone at that point. So I'm just sitting there like, and what I ended up doing was I ended up writing in my head. And I got 2 episodes of the Trek rewrite blocked out in my head, which is good because I then ended up finishing one of them, so that's done. But oh my god, yeah, I decided at about the 30-minute mark to poke my head out, and the nurse was like, "No, don't worry, he's just in the middle of dealing with something." And I'm like, "Okay." And the only reason I did that was because I've been around, and you know, so much of my family has worked in the medical industry, that it's a good thing to periodically make sure they haven't forgotten you. Now, I don't actually mean that in a neglectful kind of a way, right? I mean, you could see how that would be a bad thing, but they're busy. And every now and again, something just... excuse me, something just slides through the cracks, right? So every now and again, it's a good time to be like, hey, I'm still here, just to make sure you didn't forget I existed. And she's like, yeah, no, he's in the middle of... Okay, just... Doing my due diligence, don't mind me. But they hadn't forgotten it was just taking 7 billion years and whatever. The thing that then irritated me, and again, I don't blame him for this, but this always irritates me when anyone does this, because the most common thing I tend to interact with when it comes to any professional is they assume I'm a moron. Now, I get that, because probably about 60 to 70% of what professionals deal with when it comes to engineering, or when it comes to networking, or when it comes to, you know, working in a bank, or a financial thing, or a medical thing, or an IT thing, when you're calling the network, they're dealing with morons. So I get that. Still irritates me. Usually there's a way to clearly indicate that I am not a moron, just by the language I use and the way I describe things. But yeah, it's exactly, that's the baseline. It does make sense. I'm not going to let it get to me too much. Real quick, SDR, first of all, thank you for the sub. However, Mass Effect 3 is funded, and there's 2 ways you can tell. Obviously, you can check the queue, but I know the queue is rather large, and there's a lot of things on it. Did you know that if you pull up the website right now, and please do this if you're not aware of this, pull up the website right now and check the very upper left. There's a little scrolling ticker up there, right? And that shows the most recent 5 games that have been funded, as a way to help people keep track of stuff that is currently funded, stuff that is recently funded. And you can see Mass Effect 3 is right on that list, so just as an FYI for the future. But thank you, SDR. If you want to put that towards something else, please let me know. Yeah, I know. What irritates me most is that they go through the script even if you demonstrate that you're not a moron. That actually irritates me. That's not just a nitpick. That's something that I'll be like, all right, look, you either transfer me to a tier 2 right now, or I'm going to hang up and call and get someone else who I'm going to get to transfer me to a tier 2 right now. Oh, and by the way, I need your number so I can complain about you to your manager. Because you moron. That pisses me off. But anyways. And that was Kiss, player 2. Just putting it towards Mother 3. Thank you, Kiss, very much. Always appreciate. And thank you, SDR, by the way. Yeah, if you stick to the script, if I demonstrate that I'm not script-worthy, So, Doctor finally comes in. Lo and behold, he treats me like I'm a moron who has no idea what I'm talking about. Hang on, Trihexia. We're talking about the KotOR remake. Just wait. Let me get to there. We've got a lot to talk about. This is going to be a long Loreweek, by the way. I hope you enjoy it, Mr. Red. I had issues with that game. Great story. So, he treats me like a moron, and basically acts like I'm in there because I have an allergy problem or sniffles or whatever, right? He's just like, hey, you know, it's cool. Everything's cool. And he's got that whole attitude and tone of, got it, you're a moron, and even as I'm describing my symptoms, which I have bothered to actually track for him, which I already told the nurse, so if he glanced at the chart, he'd see that, but whatever. So he treats me like a moron. He's like, okay. Now, one of the things I bothered to do is I bothered to pay a little bit of extra so he would actually go in with a camera rather than do a, I forget what they call it, but a naked eye examination, which was the default. Because a naked eye examination is free. They just go down and they do this, and they do this, and they check, and you're good. I paid for the camera because I wanted to be really sure. Kind of glad I did. You got it. Super Mario Sunshine. Done. So he finally is doing the whole rigmarole and treating me like I just need a nasal spray and getting a sub from Saldir. He was determined to interrupt my story. Thank you, Saldir. Very much. Inquisition, you got it. He finishes examining me with the camera, goes quiet, doesn't say anything, wanders over to his chart and starts sketching something out. His entire body language has changed, by the way. Now, you know me. I pay attention to people as kind of a hobby. I've done that since I was a child. But I can immediately tell that his entire demeanor has shifted. So he then comes back, and he's like... And he's much more serious now, and much more businesslike. He says, all right, I'm going to describe to you how the nose functions. And the nose functions by F.N. Craig interrupting the story. I'm going to ignore that for a second. I'm going to finish the story. So... The way the nose functions, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but he goes through it, and he talks about this thing, and he talks about this thing, and he talks about how this filters the temperature, this filters the actual air, and this is where the actual pipe for the air comes in. And then there's these two passageways where the air comes in through, and yada. And he runs me through the whole thing. And then he looks up and says, so this is how a normal nose works. Then he sketches what my nose looks like. So... Try to be shocked, I do in fact have a deviated septum. I knew that. Knew that walking in. It's nice to have that confirmed. I have a severely deviated septum. The doctor expressed to me, frankly, that he was surprised I could breathe at all. He legitimately wasn't sure how someone could function with how little oxygen I've got to be getting, with how insanely wrong my nose is. And his whole thing is just... I mean... How do you deal... And you get used to it after a while. I've learned to breathe through my mouth since I was in high school. Yeah, but you don't get full oxygen through your mouth. I know. How do you exercise? In short bursts. Oh my god! Now, the other funny thing is so he's going through this, and he tells me, again, serious demeanor, this is going to require surgery. Again, I knew that. What I did not know, the one thing, the two things, is the one was how badly deviated it is. The other thing that I didn't know, the new thing that was the new information into my field of existence here, is the fact that apparently if you have a slightly deviated septum, you can actually fix that without surgery, which I did not know. Apparently if it's just a little bit off, or if this goes a little bit this way or whatever, then that's something that you can adjust with you put a sponge thing in there and you just hold it there for a while, or you get regular saline and a spray, and that just like encourages the nose to open up normally, right? And that's the kind of thing you could do, and that's sort of what he told me flat out. He's like, this is what I was expecting. I figured you just had a normal thing. Now, it is your call if we do the surgery or not, but I'm telling you right now that I'm not going to recommend any of those other treatments because they're not going to work for you. You require surgery. And I was like, that's okay. That's what I came in here expecting. He's like, oh. And then we started talking like, he actually started treating me like I was a human being. And, you know, and then we started discussing the options back and forth and yada, yada, yada. I asked him a few more pertinent questions, but again, I didn't learn anything new from any of that conversation. So the long and the short of it is, yes, I do need surgery. Yes, I really need surgery. He is going to carve, essentially open this section. Thankfully, the cartilage, which should be here, and the cartilage, which should be here, have not yet merged. Apparently, that's a thing that can happen. It is entirely possible that I would actually have that happen if I left this going for a few more years, just from age. And he's going to inflate a little bit the one over here, which has atrophied as a consequence of the fact that it's effectively unused. This will still be an outpatient surgery. That hasn't changed. Again, this like I said, there's very little new information here. The one and only thing I don't know, which I'm going to be asking the callback team, is can I drive myself home after the surgery? Now, you might think, why is that relevant? Well, because that's like 15 minutes that way by car. And so if I can drive myself home, I don't have to worry about anything. If I can't, I need to arrange transport there and back, which I can do, of course, but I kind of need to know that before I go in for the surgery, because if I drive myself there and then, taxi myself back, I've got a stranded car. But I don't know when it's actually going to happen. Like I said, I am currently waiting for the callback team, the surgery team, to actually call back and discuss this with me. As again, this will not be in a hospital visit, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. I don't care how much of a problem this is, I'm not going into a goddamn hospital for this. But it's still an outpatient surgery, and I still need that thing, and yada, 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 yada. So, whatever. That's where we're at with that. Now, thank you, Silver Mask, very much for the sub. I will put that towards Valiant Hearts. And thank you, Ginger Overseer. One of these days, Bloodborne will probably get funded. Not a lot of people have donated. A lot of people have donated a small amount of money towards it. That's why Bloodborne just keeps kind of trickling up there and hasn't actually get funding. It's also a long game. That's the other problem. But thank you, Ginger Overseer. And thank you, Timonash, very much. I will put that towards Wasteland 3. I mean, getting an Uber up there and back isn't a big deal. It's just going to be like $60. So. The only other reason why I bring this up, obviously this is kind of relevant to my life. My voice will almost guaranteed change. I don't know how. The follow-through, what's going to happen is I'm going to have... yeah, it's there and back, Dream Whisperer. I'm going to have a thing that's going to be basically making me like this for about 2 days afterwards. I will also have a splint on my nose. Then I'll have to go back in. No, Nerdpix. That's not even on the list yet. I'll have to go back in and then get the splint removed, and that's just your general checkup to make sure everything's fine, which I assume it will be. Assuming everything is fine, I will not be able to do any major exercise or exertions for about a week, which means I'm going to have to quit exercising for about a week, and I won't be able to do any yard work for about a week. And after that, I'll be fine. That's it. That's the follow-through. Thank you, Team Moogie, for the sub. Very much. Always appreciate. Obviously, this means that there will be more days I will have to take off in the future because I will have to go in for surgery, and because of the fact that they're crammed, my schedule has to adjust to theirs. So whenever they have available is when I'm going to be going in for surgery. Don't worry, I will make sure everyone is aware of when that is, when I get a date for it. Obviously, I have no idea. It could be this Tuesday, for all I know. It could be a month from now. I do not have any information on that. And obviously, immediately after I stream, or immediately after the surgery, I might go ahead and stream, depending on which game we're at that point in time. Like, if it's a low-intensity game, just so y'all can make fun of me, because, again, I'm probably going to be sounding kind of like this, because my nose will be completely clogged with sponges at the time. But we'll see. Either way, we'll see going forwards. Now, I feel like I got a rather large donation from somewhere in the middle of that. I think that was from FN Craig. Oh yeah, I'll have to do the Palpatine voice and reopen the wound. That'll be great. That'll be a great idea. Thank you, FN Craig, very, very much. Thank you so much for that large donation. Always appreciate. Thank you. I'll put that towards surgery. But also, if you want to put that towards a game or a run, please let me know. No promises on streaming after the surgery. If they say I should take it super easy, then I will actually take it super easy, because I don't feel like engendering complications, you know? So, we'll see. We'll see. One moment. Just need to do something really quick. This won't take long. Go. There we go. Okay. I have no preference, Larian, on either of those. I have no interest in either of those, so that's on you at that point. Listen, Canary Mary, she's just, you know, she's just misunderstood. I think other players just suck. That's... I cannot believe I did that. I really can. That hurt, too. No, Zach Teft. I've been extremely busy and otherwise distracted, so I haven't seen nothing. So, that's that. Show news-wise, what else we got here? That's something I'm discussing later this evening. Saturday is still going awesome. As a reminder, we are continuing to do premieres every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I am physically present and giving director's commentary. Next week is episode 4. That's when Kuja first shows up, along with a host of other characters and a lot of actors who will be making their first iterations. So I meant to look into this, and I didn't have time, because I spent most of my day researching law. It's always my favorite way to spend an hour. Or 2. Hollow Knight, you got it, F and Craig. It's not... Hang on. Before I say yes to that, let me check the spreadsheet. Okay, nope, we're cool. Not what I was thinking of. Only an hour. No, it was actually much more than an hour. But let's not go into that. It's okay, I was getting other work done at the same time. I'll look into this right now, because this is something that's relevant. Apparently, Streamlabs is offering a new thing. And I don't know where it is, but apparently they're trying to set up a thing where Streamlabs will handle a monthly processing to go through PayPal. In other words, monthly subs through PayPal. Now, some of you are probably saying, well, PayPal already offers monthly subs. Yes, they do, and they're terrible. They're some of the most absolutely garbage things I've ever seen. We actually did a few tests with PayPal and monthly subbing through PayPal years ago, and they were so bad that we had to actually contact PayPal support to cancel it, among other things. It's a terrible interface, and it's very user-unfriendly, and again, canceling it is just this massive problem. Mass Effect 3 was funded last week, Pika, as I just mentioned earlier. So, Streamlabs is apparently trying to do the same thing, where they track a monthly tips thing. It's right here, I'm staring at it. Oh, Jesus Christ. I only mention this because I know some people want to support me monthly, regularly, and I know some people don't like Patreon because of various political reasons, and that's fine. Right now we have the Stripe alternative, but the Stripe alternative also has a terrible interface. So assuming that the Streamlabs option exists and works, then that is the other option. Unfortunately, of course, that is going through PayPal, because that's the option for international trade right now, and so that is the other downside. So pick your poison is what that boils down to. I just thought I'd mention it to make people aware of it. It is still in beta. It's not actually gone live yet, and I haven't done my research on it, so I can't actually suggest it yet. I'm going to ignore Mr. Red for a moment, because I also want to mention, real quick, that random news. I'm just going to hit random news super quick, because I actually only have one bit of random news, and that is that Stellaris is entering a new development cycle right now, which is that they are run by Gary. Gary actually runs the entirety of the development cycle of Stellaris. I don't know how he's going to manage that, but that's on him, you know? I mean, he's kind of an overachiever anyways, you know? So that's just whatever. But the other thing, though, is that they are going to try and release regular updates every 3 months. Now, these updates aren't going to be large. They're going to be polishing updates, or bug fixes, or adding little details and just little stuff like that. Let me be clear, I'm 100% in favor of this. Having a regular team whose entire job it is to polish the product regularly, especially as expansions continue to go live and as new issues arise, is an extremely good idea for an ongoing product. If you're paying attention, this is what most MMOs have by default. Both WoW, back in the day, and FF14 now, and Guild Wars 2, I can name those 3 specifically, oh, and ST also has this, has a team whose only job it is to do these kind of regular, make sure everything's smooth patches. And while Stellaris is not exactly an MMO, Stellaris is a game that gets regularly updated with new content and new expansions regularly, and therefore needs a team to do that kind of a thing. Just like any game that receives that kind of regular content updates should have. If you're paying attention, that means Stellaris is a better live service game than 99% of live service games. Not joking. Thank you for the sub, Gary. And yeah, actually, that's another good example. PoE, which I never remember what it stands for because I always want to say Pillars of Eternity, is another game that has a regular patch content team that does that kind of, oh yeah, so we added this, so we did this, so we changed this. There's also a controversy with Paradox right now, which I'm not going to bring up because that was just brought up and it's currently in the we're looking into it phase, and I tend to leave those things until they're a little bit more done. So that's all I'm saying about that right now. We'll see where that goes. And then more people, why are you giving me money? I have so much content to go through. And I've done so much work to get this Loreweek ready. And everyone's like, here, have money. No! Okay. That's going towards Dealer's Choice. That's actually a sub. A month, that's an anniversary sub. So we'll put a little extra for that. Towards Dealer's Choice. We'll put that down here. And that was from Dame Celeste. I saw that. And one from Mr. Red, which I saw as well. I have to pull up here. Oh my god. Okay, so first of all, we have Dame Celeste for Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, which I think is one of the ones that's over there. Or maybe it's over here. I'm not sure where it ended up, actually. Where did that copy go? I think that's it over there. Hang on. Let's make sure that's on the list, because I want to make sure it's one of the ones. Damn it, Vigilant! Fire Emblem. F-E. Okay, that doesn't help. Free Darth Medoro? I'm sorry, I work for a living. Thank you very much. Fates, maybe? Nope, Fates is not on the list either. Fire Emblem Fates Conquest does not appear to be on the list. Which means I'm gonna have to go buy a copy of it. Assuming I can get a copy of it. Which means we need to hit the stream breaks. Hang on. Let's roll over here. What do we got? Hang on. Need this real quick. Okay, so KotOR for Django. Yeah. That's Yoshi's Island. That's Second Densetsu 2. Probably pronouncing wrong, which is fine. Over here. Over here. Ah, here we go. Ah, Fates Conquest. Why is this not on the list? I bought this. Look, it's still in the wrap, for God's sakes. What? Now it's on the ground. As all Fire Emblem games should be. Nobody actually likes Fire Emblem. They just throw it on the ground. Anyways. Moving on. So, we'll add that to the list as Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. Because that's... I knew I had one of these, and I'm like, I feel like I just bought this thing. Yes, I did. Anyways. Oh yeah, gotta reject... I'm not a part of your system! There we go. There's a reference for those of you who get that. Thank you, Dame Celeste. As always. Putting it towards that game. Then Mr. Red. Hang on, let's do Vigilance first, because Vigilance is smaller. I'm not even talking about that, honestly. I will probably not even see that movie unless my friends and family drag me to it. Putting that, however, towards Far Cry 3. Thank you, Vigilant. Well, the first thing you do, Nerd Picks, is you say, I put this sub towards Deathloop, which you just did. So, thank you for the sub, Nerd Picks. I will add that to Deathloop. I cannot believe no one else has added that. But then again, no one's added the Pixel remasters either, which I'm a little surprised by. The thing that people's donation strategy always, I don't want to say confuses me, but always surprises me. Like when we added the Zelda block, nobody donated towards it for like a really long time because nobody was interested in me streaming Zelda games until like all of a sudden dozens of people donated towards it. It's just weird how this works. It's like cycles or something. I don't know. Anyways. And thank you, Mr. Red. Always appreciate. Thank you. Now, you gotta give me a minute, because he put it towards a bunch of things. So, hang on. Hang on, and thank you, Omega Shinron, for the sub. You didn't put that towards something, but if you want to put it towards something, please let me know. Oh yeah, no, absolutely, Mike Kamano. That's part of the reason I added the date tracker. Actually, to be completely honest, the date tracker has been there for quite a while. It's only more recently that it's been added to the site. But I wanted to keep the date tracker there to keep track of which games have been sitting there for over a year at this point. Unfortunately, it only goes back so far because we only started keeping track at a certain point. Okay, so Mr. Red, 97. So this is 20 towards Futurama. I'm assuming that's all of them because it's the only thing that's there. 10 towards Diablo 1. 10 towards Dead Rising. 10 towards Yakuza Kiwami 2. Yes, you can, Omega Shenmue. There you go. We have added FF4 Pixel Remaster to the list as of that moment. Thank you again. Okay. Now let's get to the really news. So, what's next? What do I have on my list next? Sony. We'll start with Sony. That's a good place to start. So Sony had a conference, and they actually showed some news, kind of. They didn't show all the news, but there was some actual news. So let's just run through this here really quick. Give me a minute, Zach. That. So wrong notes. What do we got? What do we got for the Sony news? So Spiderman 2 had a showing, and we don't know too much about it, of course, because there's well, let's just be 100% blunt. Most of these showcasings are interesting, but didn't really have a lot of info. So all we know about Spider-Man 2 is that it's got Miles and Spidey. It implied there's co-op. There is probably going to be no co-op. They haven't actually 100% confirmed that. It will include Venom. Try to be shocked. That being said, it's several years out, 2 years out, in fact. I have not heard anything about that, no, to quote him. Although I have already bought Tales of Arise, not for me, actually, for a friend of mine. But the really big bit of news is that Tony Todd is voicing Venom. I know that sounds so stupid, but as someone who is a huge fan of Tony Todd, that's awesome. And yeah, the voice is like, I've been looking for someone. I can't be the only one who is presuming that's Kraven. That sounds so much like Kraven. Now, that being said, how many other people had the exact same reaction that I had to the idea that Kraven's going to be the new one, which was something along the lines of, really? Kraven? You're going with Kraven. I've never had any respect or interest in or for Kraven. I find him boring and pathetic. So the idea of Kraven being portrayed as like the big grab for Spider-Man 2 is really strange to me. Maybe they'll do something with him, but I mean, they opened up with the 6, you know? They opened up with the 6 and Osborn. And now they're and Kingpin, sorry. And now they're going down to Kraven. Like, what? Yeah, it could just be a bait and switch. Maybe they're going to do something with him. Maybe they're going to try and push him in a different direction. I've said before, it's always possible to take someone who's pathetic and terrible and turn it into someone awesome. After all, I liked the Thor movies. You thought I was going to make a Guardians of the Galaxy reference, didn't you? No. I remember Thor from the comics. Thor is terrible. Was terrible in the comics. Thor was pathetic in the comics. That's why they replaced him with the other Thor's name I can't remember right now. So, yeah, no, it's always possible to take someone and make them good. No, Loser Haas. There's nothing to talk about there. Hey, there's a new bot. Don't click it. There you go. That's the answer. It's really simple. Any comments on Fat Thor? We'll get there. But anyway, so we'll see. I mean, Spider-Man was awesome. I loved that game. I had very few complaints about that. And Iron Man. Iron Man is a little more, like, they've done some decent stuff with him. But yeah, no, Iron Man is another good example of them taking a character who was one step away from being a Nazi and turning him into Iron Man. So that's awesome. Anyways. So that's awesome. Spider-Man 2, it looks legit. even though we don't see much, even though we haven't heard much, to be perfectly frank, I'm already totally invested and interested. After all, Spider-Man 1 has built enough, faith in me that Spider-Man 2 is probably going to be a good game. This then leads immediately into the other game, which they showed no details on whatsoever, which is Wolverine. Can anyone here name the last time we've had a good Wolverine game? Not a game that Wolverine's been in. A Wolverine game. There hasn't been. Exactly. Despite the fact that Wolverine is at least was arguably the most popular X-Man by a mile, we have never actually had a good Wolverine game, my opinion. We've had a few Wolverine games. There's one Game Boy one which is tolerable, I guess. Oh, you're right. I didn't talk about Star Trek Day, did I? I'll add that to this. God, there's so much stuff to talk about this week. Like, I complain all the time about Loreweeks where there's nothing to talk about. We just chat for 15 minutes and walk on. And then we have a week like this week. God. Alright, I shouldn't put it that way. Stuff. There we go. I'm gonna disagree with that, Zactaft. I'm sorry, but that's okay. We can just disagree on that. Anyways, Tripwire CEO. What the hell's the Tripwire CEO? Hang on. Let's Google that right now. Tripwire CEO. What do we got? Oh, no, I'm not touching that with a 15-foot pole. So, no. Anyways. Wolverine game. No details. Again, it's Insomniac. I do have a degree of faith in Insomniac's games. They've put out good games. So put this in a neutral leaning towards positive for me. I would like to have a good Wolverine game. Even if we agree that the Wolverine Origins games is good, that brings us up to a grand total of one good Wolverine game ever. So it'd be nice to add another one to that list, right? We'll see. Again, they didn't show anything off, so this is just, that's a trend, by the way. So who knows? Then they showed off Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which looked okay. As usual, the comment of the story is crap, but the gameplay is awesome seems to continue being a thing for all Borderlands-related stuff, with regards to 3 and onwards. They showed off some Forspoken stuff. I haven't had a chance to watch this. I didn't have time. So there's a Forspoken thing that I haven't watched. They also showed off the Alan Wake remaster. Apparently, they're actually doing some pretty good work with this. I have to say apparently, because I never played the original. However, they are apparently actually making this a remaster rather than simply a port, which is always awesome. And I suppose that's a good enough segue as any, but I'm not going to use it because we need to talk about God of War 5. So, God of War 5. Yeah, then copyright showed up, Mike Romano. God of War 5. So first of all, the same crew, Sindri, Brock, Mimir, Atreus, and of course Kratos are all there. So allow me to say that in total contrast to the Spider-Man thing and the Wolverine thing and various other things that were announced this week, this actually shows actual freaking information. We do see some gameplay in action. We do get to see some of the stuff you can do, like enchanting your axe with fire or enchanting your axe with ice, and the way that the terrain is going to affect combat, and they actually showed stuff like an actual trailer should. It's just bizarre to see a trailer actually portray information in the modern era. The gameplay looks pretty much the same, if I'm being honest, but more, and I'm fine with that, as weird as that may sound. As I've said many times, there's two general ways to do a sequel, one of which is to completely change everything, and to just kind of restructure it and pull a Final Fantasy, reinvent the wheel. And the other way is to iterate and to try and take what exists and improve upon it in some ways, both small and large. Some games try to do both of these, and those games are Elder Scrolls. But I'm with iterative design as long as it actually does legitimately move forward with the gameplay, and it looks like it is. The narrative certainly looks interesting. Obviously, it's about Ragnarok, because duh, that's how the last game ended up. We see a lot of conflict between Atreus and Kratos, but not of the drama-y, bad written-y kind of way. In fact, I'm actually kind of with it. And one of my favorite moments of the whole thing, which of course is the thing that everyone in the universe has commented on, is the fact that Atreus at one point says, "Stop thinking like a father for a moment and start thinking like a general." Except he doesn't finish the sentence, because before he can finish that sentence, Kratos whirls on him and shouts at the top of his lungs, "No!" Because, duh, right? As usual, the characterization is spot on. Voice acting is great, and the motion capture is great. New director. Apparently, the old director was a little bit burnt out after directing God of War 4. Don't blame him. They showed off the shield a little bit. Tyr was present. Obviously, we have Fat Thor, because of course we do. He's Thor. Why wouldn't he be? He's also, we also saw Tyr is very large, too. I kind of liked that. That Tyr was legitimately I don't want to say a giant, but he towers over Kratos, and Kratos is not a small man. I also get a very strong vibe. This is just kidding. This is just analysis, but based on what they showed and how they showed it, it feels like the tone they're going for, the presentation of the narrative, is that Kratos is trying very hard to continue to hold back, probably out of fear, as demonstrated by the scene earlier where he shouted at his own son, but it's very clear that he does not want to revert to the God of War 1 through 3 days. I'm curious if by the end of this game he's going to be pushed by Thor and probably by Odin to revert to the God of War 1 through 3 days, and everyone's probably going to regret that. We'll see how they go with it, because they could go a lot of directions with this. Either way, we'll see. I sincerely doubt they will remove the RPG mechanics trihexia. In fact, I would put 100% certainty on that. But we'll see, because they even bothered to be like, yeah, we'll give you more information later. Not even a release window, which is good. I'm actually 100% in favor of that. Don't do that crap. I get so sick of that crap. I've been sick of that crap for a decade. Don't say, hey, we're working on this game. It's coming out in 2 years. Okay, that's cool. Speaking of which, that's a good segue to talk about KotOR. I'm just gonna do this. There we go. Ahem. Please stop donating. I'm trying to segue and keep my dialogue smooth. And everyone's like, hey, we're gonna interrupt you with money because we hate you. Real quick, thank you for why would that be offensive? Voice of the Authoritar? Not sure how to pronounce that. I do remember your name, Guido for Life. I do remember you. Thank you very much for the sub. And by the sub, I mean the donation. It's money. What do you want from me? It's all the same thing. Money. Thank you very, very much. I will put that towards absolutely nothing. You didn't put it towards something. But if you want to put it towards something, please let me know. Jot that down here. Voice of... I gotta make sure I spell this right. There we go. And then we have one from Dankawenka, which is towards AC Valhalla. Thank you, Dankawanka. I never remember which A to pronounce which way, but nevertheless, thank you. That name that starts with a D. Thank you very, very much. You see, it could be Dankawanka, Dankawonka, Donkawonka, Donkawanka. Like, all of those are valid, and that's just two pronunciations of A. I want to say Dankawonka, because that sounds more right. Or maybe it's Donkawonka, Dankawanka. I don't know. It's a cool name, I just don't know how to pronounce it. Because, yeah, Dank, right? Like, that makes sense. That it would be Danka. And then probably Wank, because that's a word, so Dankawanka probably sounds... Anyways, thank you very much, both of you. Always appreciate it. And I'll put yours towards, you said it in chat, Wasteland 3. There it is, I see it. KotOR. Let's get this out of the way. What do we know about the KotOR remake? Well, considering it's a name I say out loud, Darth Maduro. Yeah, no, it matters quite a bit how it's pronounced. Yeah, nothing. We know nothing. It's being developed by Asper. That's it. That's it. Everything else has an asterisk attached. There's actually legitimately conflicting information coming out about who's written it and who is developing it, or what it's going to be canon for, or when it's coming out. So they're making it, and Asper's developing it. That's it. And that's all I'm going to report on, because that's all that is fact. Now, you'll notice that I don't actually have this listed as the KotOR thing, because it just says, oh yeah, that's true. There also is conflicting information about which platform or platforms that it's coming out on. Like, it could be coming out on Alex Korobianiki. We don't know. I personally wouldn't release a game on Alex. I think that's just a little bit, reductive. But I am still thankful for the sub. Thank you, Alex. Putting it towards Skyborn. It's also not coming out for years, maybe. We don't know. It might be coming out on the Shadow Machine. That actually sounds like a real machine, doesn't it? Like an actual console. The Shadow Machine. It's going to be great. Thank you, Shadow Machine, very much. Usual question, as always. Please stop tipping. My God. That's... Okay, so that's going towards Witcher Season 1, I believe is where we're at with that. And then we have another from Dinka Wanka, I'm going to assume on that one. You say that, Larian, but I have seen conflicting information on that. So I'm not willing to state that with certainty. I do not think that's fact. I think that's rumor. At the very least, once they get their crap together and start reporting on things factually, I might report on them too. But unlike every other gaming outlet out there, I try to only report on things when I am reasonably certain about them. By the way, spoilers, that's a topic for later today. Thank you again, Dinka Wanka. I've put that towards, what is it? Bloodborne. I put that towards Bloodborne. I wrote it down. I just couldn't remember the game. And thank you, Alex. But and I want to stress this. I've already seen people in my Discord. I've seen people in Reddit threads. I've seen people in chat just now sharing thoughts and rumors about KotOR. We know nothing! I'm sorry. I get it. We know nothing. I'm as interested and engaged and invested as anybody else, but we know nothing! All we're doing is speculating a blank sheet of paper. That's all we're doing right now. Which brings me to the actual topic. Remakes, remasters, ports. Some of you may or may not be aware of the fact that we are working on something called the Star Trek Rewrite Project. I finished episode 3 recently. I'm actually in the middle of working on episode 4. That'll be some of the work I'll be working on today after the streaming is done. Hi, Java. Now, you're probably thinking, yeah, exactly. We know it's coming out at the moment. That may change. The several people over the years, over the decades at this point, have all said the same general thing to me. Why bother making a fan fiction about Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger or Star Trek? Why do that? What's the point? Just make your own thing. Very recently, it was either today or yesterday, I had someone, who I'm not going to name names, said in Discord, why bother to use a remake as an excuse to make a new story? Why not just stay faithful to the original story? Now, I've actually already proven my point by virtue of how this conversation has gone, and chat has proven it for me. The reason why is because investment. Some of you may or may not know the fact that I have my own setting. It's called the Extant. It's actually fully called Lore Extant because copyright, but I don't call it that because that's dumb, and that's only there for copyright reasons. So, yeah, no, that's separate to KotOR. Let's ignore that for a moment. That's all over there. Nobody cares about the Extant. That's not fair. There's probably like 3 people who care about the Extant, not counting myself, obviously, because nobody has any investment in it. Now, that's not a dig. That's not a take. That's not, oh, you suck. No, substantially more people want me to do more work on Star Trek because they're invested in Star Trek, right? Because they care about Star Trek. Because we care about KotOR. That's why we're running around like, well, I say we, you, are running around like chickens with your heads cut off, speculating and debating and wondering what it could be and how it could be and why it could be, right? Because we care. And now, again, there's no judgment in any of this. There's no mockery. There's no passive aggressiveness. It just makes sense that there are so many people who have a pre-existing investment, a pre-existing relevance to their lives or to their interest or their engagement, that's why they are already automatically inclined towards something. This is related to something I talk about semi-frequently, which is familiarity effect. Now, familiarity effect is actually kind of a different thing, but it is related to this because the whole point of familiarity effect is you'll like something more than you otherwise would because it has something familiar in it, right? Making a mod of a Doom map, which is based on a Star Trek level, is familiarity effect in a nutshell, right? Making a Trek rewrite project is familiarity effect. Making a KotOR remake is familiarity effect. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up with regards to remakes, remasters, and ports specifically is this is something that I have admittedly changed my opinion on over the years. Semi-recently, yesterday, in fact, someone commented on a very old video of mine where I was talking about Super Mario 64 on the DS and my opinions at the time on the difference between ports and remakes. I didn't distinguish remasters because I was an idiot. But the three categories each have their own place and purpose, and a good port, a good remake, and a good remaster, in my opinion, are all good things. The downside, of course, is when people do this as a quick cash grab by farming it out to some other company who has no idea what they're doing just to make a little bit of extra money for cheap. That can go to hell, but that process can go to hell in general, whether with regard to video games or otherwise. But a good port? Hell yeah! A good remaster? Hell yeah! A good remake, what I usually refer to as a proper remake? Hell yeah. This brings me to KotOR. Now, one of the comments I've heard, one of the things I've already seen argued in multiple locations, including my own Discord, is we want a remake, we want a port. And these two sides being in opposition to each other, which is interesting to me, because I'm not really on either side per se, but at the same time I see the benefits and detriments of both sides. If this is a good remaster, then that's great, because it means we get a modern take, well, a slightly polished take of the old game. Remember, a remaster is just a port with a few changed little details, usually in the form of modern convenience features and stuff like that. So, yeah, sure, cool. Modern take on it, done. In my opinion, that would be a little bit of a waste, though, because of this exact specific example. Because KotOR 1 is perfectly playable as is in the old version, with some exceptions, obviously, because you can just go and you can just play KotOR 1 right now. I should know, I've done it on stream more than once. So I would be more inclined towards a remake, which actually changes stuff, and actually changes the dialogue and the story, and fixes things, and adds new gameplay, and yada yada yada, right? It actually changes stuff to make it a remake. Because in my opinion, we don't need a port, we don't need a remaster of KotOR. We already have KotOR, right? This is the exact same reason I was looking at Warcraft 3 with such joy and then disdain, because everything coming out about Warcraft 3 was that Eclectic was going to interrupt me in the middle of this speech, and everything coming out about it was that it was going to be a remake, that they were going to change it, polish up the lore, make it seem more modern, make it actually tie into the many retcons that have happened since Warcraft 3 came out, and actually change up the gameplay and the balance and yada yada. Then they walked all of that back, and it's just a port. It's not even a good port, it's actually a bad port, because it has bugs and issues the original didn't. Oh, also they got rid of the original. So, you see my issue here? There was no need, zero need, for Warcraft 3 Reforged, because Warcraft 3 is available online easily and readily, playable right now, with no real issues. So, in that specific case, there's no real purpose in having a port of Warcraft 3. Frankly, I would say there's not even a reason to have a remaster of Warcraft 3, but that's getting more into opinion. And you see why I say this about KotOR in specific. Now, KotOR is a little bit older and a little bit worse. No offense to anybody who likes KotOR, but I mean more on the technical side of things, right? So KotOR has more reason to have a modern port. This is why I'm at least partially in favor of the idea of a remaster of KotOR. Because at the very least, there's a benefit to that, right? Yeah, sure, we can go and play KotOR 1 right now. And it is digitally available, by the way. So it's not like the N64 problem, right? It's not like so many games I've had to say no to for being added to the list, because if I was to buy a copy of it, it'd run $300. It's not like Paper Mario 2, one of the best RPGs ever made, which to this day has never had a second release. You can just go buy KotOR 1, right? However, it does still have bugs and issues and problems, especially on some modern machines, and therefore, at the very least, a port or a remaster, yes. I still would be disappointed by it. I'm not going to lie about that, but at least there is a purpose and a function in that existing, right? Now I got to talk about remakes, which means I got to first say thank you. Thank you, Eclectic. As always, appreciate those bits. Thank you. Give me a moment. So that's going towards... What do we got here? What do we got? Donation. Too many donuts. Go for a donut right now. I haven't had sweets in a while. Not on purpose, just I haven't bought any the last several times I've gone to the bakery. I've been trying a thing where I don't get bread for my sandwiches for a while. Not because of any health reasons, just because I'm trying something new. So I didn't hit the bakery. So all I have is, like, lettuce for my sandwiches and my burgers. So, anyways. And from Loner, I knew there was another one. Thank you, Loner. Now, I say thank you, but at the same time, I hate you for putting that towards Conker's Bad Fur Day, but that's okay. 665. Conker's Bad Fur Day. So, KotOR Remakes. Anybody who knows me, seriously, anybody who's even watched my show anytime in the last 8 years at this point, knows that I am incredibly in favor of proper remakes. I am in favor of Leaf Green for Pokemon. I am in favor of Final Fantasy IV on the DS. I'm in favor of Super Mario 64 on the DS. I'm in favor of Final Fantasy VII R1. And I could give other examples of that. I could give other processes, but you get the point. I have been very in favor of proper remakes since the concept of a proper remake was first introduced to me. Which I'd have to think about that, as far as what that first one was. But it doesn't matter. Moving on. Because the word proper is the important part. Now, that's also getting into a little bit of an asterisk. Because so the whole point of a proper remake is that it changes things substantially enough to qualify as a remake. This ties into a question I think I saw Hazardous ask about just a minute ago, which I'm not ignoring. I'm just not there yet. And it has to be good. Now, unfortunately, both of these are pretty nebulous questions and pretty nebulous things to define. What makes a remake good, after all? What makes a remake an actual proper remake is going to entirely depend on your opinion, and that is the truth of that. And that's not really helpful, because what that essentially means is there is no actual definition for a proper remake, because it's always going to depend on you to define whether one is or is not. Hydrocrillium. So, I'm the person, and I've said this for years, I am super in favor of changing things as much as you want to. I've always been in favor of that. I've said before, if I was ever handed the reins of remaking, say, the Final Fantasy games, I would have absolutely zero hesitation about changing whatever I felt I needed to or wanted to improve the work. Now, that is my intention, walking into that, to improve the work. And obviously that's based on my opinions and blah, 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 blah. But you get my point, right? If I decide, and this is something I've been bouncing around in my head for years now, if I decided to make a remake of Final Fantasy III, which was a turn-based, grid-based tactical RPG, and use that to use their pseudo-class system as far as how the gameplay combat functions, I'm fine with that. I know quite a few people, including at least a few people in chat, who would look at that and say, whoa, that's terrible, because I've changed too much. Now, I don't agree with that at all, because I don't even understand where that opinion is coming from. Unless it's if you're going to do something that much, make something new thing, which, as I've already said, I think is kind of a nonsensical argument to begin with, but I don't have anything to say about that, so let's just move on. So, KotOR, obviously, fresh reminder, blank sheet of paper, but if KotOR was to be a proper remake, they have the availability to change a great deal if they wanted to. They could completely overhaul the combat, have an entirely new combat engine if they wanted to. They could have a completely different storyline, they could mash the storyline around to make it fit with the AU. We've already got that, what is it called? The High Republic, I think, is what they call it. I admit I haven't really been following it, but you get the point. Like, they could make it fit with the High Republic and change the timeline of it to line up with the AU more, right? They could try to keep it within the EU if they wanted to, or they could keep it completely disconnected from everything, or they could change it so the main character actually has voice acting. And this is actually one of the things that not a lot of people have really mentioned or talked about, except for me, near as I can tell. If they make any changes to the story, they have to run into the voice acting problem. Because most of the pre-existing voice actors still exist, but not all of them do. Some of them have died. One of them died 2 weeks ago. Ed Asner, by the way. Which sucks. He was awesome. I know we all bash on Vrook. He was a good voice actor, and he's done some good stuff. So, we don't actually have the availability to pull all of those voice actors if they were to do any changes to the dialogue. And I say it this way because this is the choice. There's no in-betweeny here. Not really. We don't have the option to revoice this person and not revoice this person, because that's just going to sound wrong, right? Because different mics and different audio processing and different file format, among other things. So if they're changing any of the dialogue, they're probably changing all of the dialogue, which means new voice acting for everything, which is fine. However, as we've said many, many, many times, recasting is always a very persnickety thing, and with good reason. Assuming the previous actor or actress was actually good and actually wanted, as in it's someone we liked as an actor or actress, that means they're automatically starting down the hill. They already have an uphill battle in order to just get to the point where they would be otherwise, and then they have to do it. So, in other words, it's harder. That's the whole point. It is more difficult and more strenuous in order to actually make people accept the new voice acting, because we already have existing voice acting, for the most part. Now, again, they can bring back several voice actors and skip some of those problems, but who's going to voice Canderous? Thank you, Tazara, very much. As always. You didn't put it towards anything, but if you want to put it towards something, Tazara, please let me know. Well, currently in the realm of remake, because a remaster this wouldn't be an issue. This wouldn't even be something we're discussing, because there's no need to change any of the dialogue because it's a remaster. So it's the exact same dialogue with the exact same story, so we have the files, so we just copy-paste the files over and play them at the right time. Done. So if this is a remaster, this is a non-issue. If this is a remake, they have to decide if they're doing that or not. Now, they probably would. That's kind of the point of a remake. But my point is, it's one of the very first decisions you have to make right at the beginning is, are we changing dialogue, yes or no? Hang on, I had another donation in the middle of that I wanted to acknowledge. Somewhere, there it is. It's from Dirkrillian. I saw it. Thank you, Dirkrillian. Very much. And that's towards the show. No, that isn't. That's towards WoW BC. I didn't even see the one from Sean. I'm glad I checked. Hang on. So that's towards WoW BC. And thank you, Sean, very much. I'll put that towards the 2008 Spider-Man, which is how I'm going to continue to write that, so I don't forget it. I think it's 2008. Probably Java. Most likely. But you see, I guess, obviously, I'm obviously explaining myself wrong because Java doesn't get my point. I'm just trying to explain some of the behind-the-scenes mentality and perspective that goes into something like a proper remake. Remember, we know nothing about KotOR. But if you're in the design meeting, it's like, okay, we're doing a redo of KotOR. One of literally the very first things they need to decide is what we're doing with the dialogue because of the voice acting situation. Right? It's one of the first bullet points that should be addressed in one of the very first meetings. Even before they start thinking about gameplay design or ports or what it's going to be on, they need to decide what they're doing with the dialogue because of the fact that the voice acting situation exists. Someone in chat mentioned this, I forgot who, but one of the other things they can do, by the way, in addition to keeping it in the EU or more connecting it to the wonderful High Republic, is they could connect it more towards Tor, which is also an option. As weird as this may sound, of the three, I think I'd prefer that the most. Because Tor's biggest problem has always been its external continuity. And I've given negatives to Tor for lack of external continuity, but Tor has really good internal continuity. Tor exists in a bubble. Adding KotOR to that bubble is something I'm kind of okay with, Adding that in and connecting those two, that makes a degree of sense to me. Especially since Tor is still going and still receiving updates and content. So it makes sense business-wise in addition to creatively speaking, my opinion. Yeah, exactly, Julia. Tor has always been its own universe. Even though it tries to connect with KotOR, it's always failed at it. So, we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of options. Gameplay-wise. So right now, KotOR is effectively, let's be honest with ourselves, effectively KotOR is a turn-based RPG. We've talked about this before. It's a turn-based RPG in the same general way that Neverwinter Nights, the original Neverwinter Nights, is. Because while it's live action, it's real time, not only does it have a pause feature, obviously, but everything happens in 4-second cycles, or 6, I think it's 4 or 6 seconds, I forget what it is. But I demonstrated this when we were streaming both games. You make a command, and then it waits until the next turn comes up, which is 3 or 4 seconds on, and then you do the command, and then you wait, and then you do the next command. So it is functionally turn-based. Now, that's actually fine, really. As I said in both of those streams, there's nothing wrong with fake turn-based combat, because it worked, and you could still plan it out as if it's a turn-based game. It just looks a little bit prettier. They could enforce that. They could really jump into that and really actually make it, okay, this is a turn-based game, just like KotOR and Neverwinter Nights really were. I doubt it, but they could. They could also go full real-time, actually make it a straight-up action game, either like the Jedi Knight series or like the recent Jedi Fallen Order, whichever direction they want to kind of go with that. Or Tor. Tor is also full real-time, although Tor has its own little thing, but Tor mostly sits on your typical cooldown system like most MMOs do. Excuse me. I mean, animation bugs galore on KotOR in general. How many times have you been, like, doing an attack, and your weapon isn't there, even though you're doing the attack, and then you come out of the attack animation and the weapon just kind of appears in your hands? Anyways. Which I'd prefer? I don't have a preference there, as weird as that may sound. I don't. I think both work just fine, for their own reasons. What I care about is if it's good. So I don't have a preference on that one, whether they change it to full real-time or enforce it with turn-based, as long as they do a good job with it. And this is as good a time as any to segue into the fact that Asper is the group that's making it. One of the only facts that I am willing to say with certainty about this game. And you're probably wondering, why are you even bringing this up? Well, you've probably never heard of Asper, which wouldn't surprise me. That's because Asper is a porting company. Asper has never made a game. Ever. I actually double-checked, and I'm looking at the list right now. However, what Asper does is ports games. Now, as weird as this may sound, my opinion, this is a good thing. I've talked about this many times. There's a good market for having developer companies whose only job it is to port or to port things forward or to remaster things, right? To try and move a game into the modern audience. It actually irritates me when companies either try to do this in-house and fail at it, or market out to some cheapo company who has no idea what they're doing. There are actual port companies out there, there's like 5, I think, maybe even less than that are actually good at their freaking job. Now, the reason I mention this is because this is a port company, and therefore, if nothing else, this is probably the only bit of good news about this whole thing, in my opinion, is at the very least, these people know how to do ports. They've been doing it for freaking years. How many years? Since 1997. Also, as several people in chat have pointed out, the fact that this is one of the porting companies means this is more likely to be a remaster than a remake, which some people will be happy about and some people won't. I should also mention, and this was also brought up in chat just a bit ago, these people have ported KotOR several times. To Mac, to Linux, and to phone, specifically. Thank you, Justin. Always appreciate. Do they have good ports? I've played a few of their ports, but I can only point to... I'm going to point to one specifically, because I've pointed this out before. No thoughts on that, Loner. It's also rumor and not confirmed. I do not comment on rumors on my show. So, good ports. Civilization 6 on the Switch. Some of you probably remember, I've mentioned this before. I have actually used Civ 6 on the Switch as an example of a good port. Because they actually they didn't just put it onto the Switch, they actually sat down and thought about how you're going to control a game like Civilization 6 with this. And they said, okay, so we're going to have this shortcut command here, we're going to have this shortcut command here, this is how we access this menu, this is how we move the map, blah, 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 blah. They put real and actual thought into how the control scheme is going to be different, and it's actually, in my opinion, legitimately fun to play Civ 6 on the Switch. By contrast, to use an immediate contrast of this, Cities Skylines, which is a great game, has a terrible port on the Switch, which they did not do. I'm not actually sure who did that port. Cities Skylines plays and runs terribly on the Switch. So there's your contrast right there. So yes, I can definitively say they have made at least one port that I am very much in favor of and consider very positive. So again, leaning towards positive by that news, the only news we have, alone. They also did the Jedi Academy port to Switch. I haven't played that, so I can't comment on that. I don't know if that's any good. They have done the Republic Commando port to Switch. Haven't played that. Yeah, but there's a few Star Wars things here, if it's not obvious. There's been a few here. I mean, they have a pretty big list of games they ported. Justin donate. I should see what he actually donated. Yeah, we do not know anything except that Asper is the team that's making it. Which is why I'm focusing so much on the remake, remaster, port side of the argument, rather than, here's totally what I think about KotOR. Because again, we don't have any information there. You got it, Justin. Give me a moment here. That's a bit of a shame for a philosopher, but at least it's decent? I don't know. And thank you again, Justin. So who knows? Who knows whether it's going to be good or bad or in between? If you asked me, if you asked me to put money on it right now, and I'm willing to be wrong about this, put the money down, I would say this is most likely going to be a remaster. We're going to get polished up graphics. We're going to get the same general sound files, literally or figuratively, in terms of the same actors and actresses. And it's just going to be KotOR again. And that is what I think they're going to do. Among other things, it's the cheapest option. That's not true. It's the second cheapest option. So, we'll see. And I'd be okay with that, because as mentioned earlier, KotOR is kind of an old game that, even though we can get a hold of a copy of right now, is kind of not super runnable on modern systems, either unless you know what you're doing or happen to be lucky. So, oh yeah, I suppose there is one other thing we know. We do know, because of the fact that this was showcased at the Sony conference, that at the very least, Sony is putting money into this. Now listen to how I phrase that. I'm not saying it's a PS5 timed exclusive or a total exclusive or anything else, because inconsistent information. What I am saying, however, is that Sony has put money into this, and that's strange to me. See you around, Java. I do not off the top of my head, Loner, no. I'm not actually sure why. I mean, obviously, I know that sounds like a strange statement, but for Sony to be financially backing this project implies that Sony is trying to take a bite out of Star Wars gaming right now. We'll see. But again, yeah, I would also say that if Sony is actually backing this financially, which I would almost guarantee that they are, that leans more towards the remake argument, and also, again, them trying... Basically, the idea here is that Sony is trying to take away some of EA's money, is the summary. Now, any company could do that. Hear me out for a second. If any company out there, even Ubisoft, suddenly decided to say, hey, we're coming out with this new Star Wars game, it's a single-player focused game that has no DLCs or microtransactions, and it's focused on classic Star Wars, and it's fun. I guarantee you that the overall reaction to that would probably be positive. The audience is primed for that. because we've had years of the, let's call it what it is, tyranny of EA Star Wars games. Or lack of EA Star Wars games, if we want to phrase it that way. So, actually being, yeah, like Jedi Fallen Order is a good example. Of course, I really like Jedi Fallen Order. But you get the idea. EA had their one win under their belt, and that was it. Everything else was asterisks everywhere. So, any company that comes out right now and says, hey, we're making a new Star Wars game, it pretty much gets an automatic PR win. And they're probably going to guarantee day release sales because of that. So, near as I can tell, this is just my analysis at this point. Sony is just the first company to get out the door. That's also probably why they did a teaser with absolutely no information in it. Even though this game probably isn't coming out for years. So they could get out the door first. I wouldn't be surprised if several other companies are trying to do the same thing right now. Still scummy. I'd still punch whoever decided to do that in the face, to be perfectly blunt, because I think it's not only just scummy, but I hate it. Hey, everyone, I'm making a video. It'll come out in 2 years. Be excited! God, I hate that. God. Yay! Woo. Well, I don't tease anything. I'll tell you know exactly which ruminations are coming out. You know, I could pull out a calendar right now. Let's see here. Hang on. Okay, so that's this year. Hang on. There's next year. Hang on, let's go to 2023. Okay, on, what is this? January 9th of 2023, Season 1, Episode 13 of Star Wars The Animated Series, The Ambergris Elements Rumination will go live. I don't have to tease Jack. I can tell you exactly what's coming out and when. Because I've already finished all this crap. It's done. In fact, hang on. When's the last Lorecraft come out? Hang on. Oh, it's actually January as well. There we go. January 2023, the 29th, is when the final episode of the World of Lorecraft goes live. That'll be the episode about Argus and the end of Legion. Thank you, Ultima Cloud. If you happen to know where you want to put that, please let me know. Look, I'm just saying, those videos are going out. Or I'll commit suicide, one of the two. So, yeah, I'm working on Bloodborne at some point in the future. Elden Ring we'll probably be doing in January, because it's such a highly requested game, so that's probably going to get bumped. Do I think I can make a Lorecraft for STO? No. But I could make a lore run for STO, which I've already done. I highly recommend it. No, future Lorecrafts, I'm more okay with things that are a little bit smaller in scope than that. Endwalker, you got it. FF14 Endwalker. Oh, that's true. The Pixar Soul Ruben. When's that going live? Hang on, that's next. Hang on, that's 2022. We gotta go back a bit. Hang on, let's go back in time here to 2022. The Soul Rumination on the Pixar's Soul is going live December 23rd, 2022. By the way, that's actually on the website. You can actually check that. I obviously don't list every episode of Trek because that would be ludicrous, but all of the ruminations are on the website if you want to know when they're going live. Anyways, moving on. What's my next topic? Oh god, where are we at? Trek! Right, let's talk about Star Trek. So I don't have any notes about this, so we're going completely from memory. We are doing it live. So, actually, wait, no, I do have some notes. Hold on. I wrote down some notes here. Good night, Blue Up Alex. Get some good rest. Thank you for the sub. Putting it towards Trails in the Sky, too. Give me a moment. Jot that down here. Okay. So, Star Trek. What do we got? So we showed off a little bit of Strange New Worlds and Prodigy, and that's all I saw. I don't know if they actually showed off anything else. so I'm unaware of that. We do, actually, that's not true. We do know they have talked about the fact that they do have 3 other Star Trek shows currently in production that they're deliberately holding on the, oh yeah, Picard, and they're holding on the reins on them and not allowing them to actually get into full-fledged production because they don't want to have that many Star Trek shows going concurrently, which is actually a pretty smart move, so I'm with that. But so there's pre-production, production, and full production is the definitions I'm using, Mike Romano. So they're in the middle here. They have already cast people, they've already built sets, they've already written scripts, but they're not at the point of actually sitting down, filming, figuring out lighting, etc. So, Strange New Worlds. We'll talk about that first. There's only 3 things that caught my attention. First of all, we're having a young Uhura on there. That's kind of awesome. Yes, but I don't remember right now, Mike Romano. Second of all, we're seeing the return of M'Benga. How many of you even remember who that is? No judgment, I'm just curious. I mentioned him in the Ruminations of TOS. Wait a moment to see if anybody's here. Take a drink. I should take a drink. That's a good idea. Justin, we have one person. M'Benga was the Vulcan medical specialist who showed up for, I think, 2 episodes of TOS. He was very brief. He was intended to be a recurring character, and then real life happened. But that's who that is. So they're bringing him back. And another character who's called Lon Noonien Singh. I don't know who that is. I'm sure it's not important. Anyways, they also have an ANR. They just showed that briefly, which is kind of neat to have the Andorians in general, since the Andorians are one of the founding members of the Federation. And, you know, remembering that the ANR exist at all, which was something that Enterprise established. For those of you who don't remember, the ANR are the blind, partially psychic sub-race of the subdivision, or whatever, of the Andorians, excuse me. It looks cool, you know. It looks like it's going to be typical Trek, which I will be completely honest is like the least interesting thing for me as far as Trek. But nevertheless, as I've said many times, even if I was in charge of Star Trek, even if I had total creative control, I would still want to have, you know, at least one show which is dedicated towards weekly episodes that have nothing to do with each other. Because that is core Trek, and that should be still a thing, and there's still plenty of people who want and enjoy that. I just give it to this other team and walk away from it. Prodigy. Let's get this out of the way really quick. Both the Prodigy trailer and the Picard Season 2 trailer sucked. Can we just get it out of the way? I don't want to break it down. Both trailers are bog standard, copy-paste, textbook trailers, and I am so sick of that. I recently commented that there's 4, I think. Hang on. So there's the scary movie trailer, there's the action movie trailer, there's the lighthearted trailer, and then there's the kids trailer. Yep, 4. There are 4 trailers right now. There are exceptions, of course. But these trailers are so textbook at this point that you could actually, and I've done this in Premiere just to see it, you can actually put some of these trailers side by side, and you see how they follow the same beats within a second of each other. Because they've got it timed to, this has to happen at this point, this has to happen at this point, and there needs to be this kind of a reaction to this kind of a scene. It's just, I'm so sick of it. That being said, let's talk about the content of the trailers. So we got actually a decent amount of information, despite the nonsense of it, in the Prodigy trailer. It is clearly being aimed at kids, which can suck. It doesn't have to suck, My Little Pony, but it can suck, you know, if you give a mouse a cookie. They're people who live on some, you know, abandoned world, and they happen to find this crashed Federation ship, which is obviously some kind of test ship, which has a hologram of Janeway on it, which is the teacher. You know, it's the student driver kind of a thing. And they're like, okay, well, let's go and do adventures. The Kazon were there. There was a few other little references. But that seems to be the general gist and style. It's a bunch of kids who are just figuring out how to be in space and trying to recapture that particular feel of wonderment and just going out there and trying to figure out how this stuff works, which actually I'm kind of in favor of, to be completely honest. In my opinion, Star Trek has a value in having a show or an arc that's entirely devoted towards here, lighthearted romp in space, right? Like, it's not going to be super complex. It's not going to be very in-depth. There won't be amazing character moments, yada, yada, yada. But it could just be a fun ride, right? This is one of the things I've talked positively about Final Fantasy 1 with regards to its story axis, is that FF1 is just an adventure. And it's one of the only things good about that story. If they said when it was coming out, I didn't catch it. So, whoa is my answer to that one. Let's see if we can find something cool. Let's see if I can be distracted from adorable pictures of my niece and look this up. I could look this up on my computer, but that would just take way too much time. What we got here? This year? Hang on. Oh, here we actually have a release date, October 28th. That's soon. October 28th is when it's going live. It's going to be a 10-episode run, as most streaming shows tend to be nowadays. First episode is called To Be Determined. Oh, that's helpful. Let's see, is there anything I missed here? Let's check this. The USS Protostar is going to be the name of the ship. And as I suspected, it is... So I wasn't sure about this, and I don't like to report on rumors, but it is confirmed the show is actually set in the Delta Quadrant. That would explain why there's a Kazon there. There's also apparently going to be a Medusan, a Tellarite, some races that are new. Anything else here? Blah, 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 blah. Not really. Also, Robert Beltran is in it. We don't know how or what. Probably a hologram, if we're being completely honest. So, that's that show. Cool. Moving on to Picard. Now, as a fresh reminder, I still haven't seen New Trek, by design. I don't have the time, and it's not come up yet for the show. But... So I haven't seen any of New Trek, still. So I haven't seen Picard Season 1. One of the things I said before Picard came out was that if you're going to have a show called Picard and centered on Picard, there are two beats it needs to hit. The Borg and Q. Because there is nothing that is more tied into his character and more recurring for his character than those two beats across Trek. Right? Right? I'm pretty sure most people would agree with me, at least provisionally on this point. So, if you remember, Picard Season 1, one of their big teasers was the Borg! Spoilers, the Borg barely have anything to do with it. So, yay. That then leads us to Q. So, let me ask you something legitimately. Just bear with me for a moment. Let's say that Picard Season 2 hasn't been announced, and I'm announcing it right now. And I obviously have all these special effects and all this cool stuff to show you, rather than just me sitting here and talking in front of my set. Let's assume for a moment that it's going to be an entire season where the major story arc across the season is Q and Picard. That's the focus. What would your reaction to that be? Nobody has a reaction to that. I knew it. Okay, I will admit that I'm seeing some interesting reactions in chat. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could take that concept. People have taken that. There's two entire book series devoted towards Picard and Q that I know of. Now, the reason I bring this up is that is exactly what I was expecting, and that is exactly what we're not getting. Q is going to show up for the first episode. And based on what we're seeing, he's probably not going to show up again until the last episode. Q is just the quest hook, nothing else. Instead, the season is entirely about Picard and crew being in the past trying to change history because time travel is awesome. Now, forgive me for sounding weird in my tone as I'm saying this, but why would you do that? Let me walk you through my thought process here, because I feel like I'm not explaining myself. Why do this is really my core thrust. If you just want to do a random story that has nothing to do with anything, then you could do that with all sorts of other things. You don't need to do that in the Picard show. Because near as I can tell, this story has nothing to do with anything. It's just this isolated... I'm sorry, let me walk that back. It is an isolated story, because it's a... history has been changed, we need to change it back story. We know Season 4 of Discovery is coming. We know Lower Decks is still going. We know Prodigy is coming out. So guaranteed, the time travel is going to be undone. So it's in a bubble by default. So it is its own isolated story. Now that can work. And there's perfectly good reasons to have an isolated story. I was just talking about that. Strange New Worlds is going to be isolated stories. But why do this with the Picard show with Q? This is like, okay, hang on. I've got this 5-star massive kitchen with access to any ingredient I could want in the world, which could be delivered here within minutes. And I've got these incredible chefs. Can I have like a Big Mac real quick, please? Because that's exactly what this is doing. They have these wonderful tools. They have Patrick Stewart and John Delancey. Both of them are both still active, which is important in the current era of people dying. They're both active, and they're still both great actors. And you have a premise of an entire show called Picard, and so many possibilities, of which we've only listed 3 within the last few minutes, that they could do with this, and they've decided to do a Big Mac. Why? Or a PB&J. You know what? That's actually better. Because a Big Mac could be made to be good. I make really good burgers myself. But there's only so much you can do with a PB&J. At a certain... there's only so much you can add to or change to peanut, butter, bread, and jelly. And that's it. There's only so many things you can change there, right? So that's a much better... I'm going to credit Saldy for that. That's a much better analogy. It might be good. I don't know. I like a good PB&J. That's cool. Why do this? Why waste this? And I'll admit that I actually... So in addition to the fact that I think this is stupid, I admit this personally pisses me off. You know why? Just a few days ago, I had to sit down and spend several hours scouring every NES game I could think of, desperately trying to find a sprite that fit the specific thing I needed for a specific scene, because I don't really have the time or attention to be able to make my own sprites for the Trek Rewrite project, so I have to make do with my dinky little kitchen with one stove that only has 3 burners that barely work, to continue the analogy. And I'm not trying to make a PB&J. I'm trying to make an actual goddamn burger. And it pisses me off seeing this kind of thing. And it's been pissing me off more the older this has always pissed me off. This has pissed me off since I was a kid. But the older I get, the more I see this kind of crap of waste. You're capable of so much. You have all the money and resources and access and potential and backing and time, and you are making a PB and freaking J. Now, S.A. Ross says, is it wasted if it ends up being good? Yes! You know why? Because it's a PB&J. A good PB&J, no matter how good it is always going to be a good PB&J. There's kind of a ceiling on that. And if you burn all this time and resource and effort and production and costs and contacts and accessibility and rights and political throw into making a PB&J, you are still wasting, even if it's good. So yes, it still pisses me off. That's the Star Trek news. We haven't even gotten to the legal crap yet. What's next? Oh, the legal crap. Okay, so for those of you who are here for, like, you know, everything that I normally talk about, this is probably the time to bow out. Because we're going to talk about the Apple versus Epic lawsuit, and then we're going to go and listen to some music. And that's all I got left on the schedule. So if you have no interest in either of those things, this is the time to peace out. No, I haven't seen the Matrix trailer yet. I actually don't care that much. The reason I'm groaning so much is because this is actually a very complex thing, and I did my goddamn diligence on this one. And I actually did my research, and I actually tried to summarize this. And this is probably still going to take me an hour to get out, because there's so much to discuss here. Let's get the most important thing out right off the bat. Plenty of news outlets out there have been incorrectly and wrongly reporting on this case. I gotta be honest, part of the reason I agreed to talk about this, there's actually two big reasons. Three, excuse me. One is people asked me to. Another is that this is just kind of becoming a thing that I discuss economic news and lawsuit news when it regards gaming or stuff we actually care about, stuff that enters our sphere of influence. But the third thing that pushed me into talking about this is how many other games media sites are massively misreporting, or not just misreporting or screwing up, but actively saying the exact opposite of what's actually happened. If you just Google right now, you don't have to do it, but if you just Google right now, Epic v. Apple lawsuit results or something like that, you will get multiple websites who are reporting on it so wrong that multiple of them are disagreeing with each other on what the result of this is. So, let's rip apart all the details. Well, I'm going to go into the details, but let's rip apart all the details for a second, and let's really get down to the 3 core points, okay? There was supposed to be 2 core points. There's actually 3. Core point 1. Has Apple violated the Sherman Act in federal court? Answer, no. Point 2. Has Apple violated the Sherman Act in California court? No. Third point. Has Apple done something that is considered a anti-steering law violation and therefore is problematic for that? Yes. There's actually a 4th point that I just thought of, but I'm trying not to get too much into the weeds right now because there's a lot going on here. I was actually just about to plug Hoeglaw. I don't know how to pronounce it. Hang on, let me find his site really quick. If you want someone to do a 2-hour breakdown on this, he's the person to watch. I'm going to try to break this down into slightly less than 2 hours. Here we go. Hoeglaw. Here, I'll link it in chat. I'll put a link into the VOD as well. This is a lawyer. One of 3 lawyers I think I follow on YouTube at this point. And he usually knows his stuff. Cool stuff. Moving on. All right. Where do I begin? All right, so okay. One of the things I want to talk about first is the actual judge. When she put her ruling out, she put out I think it's a 180-page essay that is her ruling. Now, I want to explain that briefly, because I haven't heard anyone else talk about it, even Hoeglaw. I haven't heard actually talk about this. There are 2 kinds of legal documents, in my experience. There's nonsense, which is gibberish, which is written by lawyers for lawyers in order to try and encourage them to keep having a job and keep the business going. I spit on that. Patooey. The other type of legal document is a legal document, the kind of thing that needs to exist, because what it is a mathematical proof. Now, in case you don't know what that means, if I was to say, I literally have a bag of apples here, this is great, or a bag of carrots, excuse me. 2 plus 2, or 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? Now, in reality land, I don't need to prove this. You could look at this and say, yeah, 1 plus 1 equals 2, duh. But mathematically proving this is actually a whole other bag. In order to mathematically prove something, actually prove something, you need to do your due diligence and your back work and show your work. You need to go through the steps of this is how this works, this is how an object exists, this is how we enumerate an object, this is how we count an object, this is how we add to a count of an object, this is how the number system works, and we have to prove that this is a thing. This is why mathematic proofs are so rare and few in between and are still debated to this very day. Because a mathematic proof is something that effectively defines itself. And it's surprisingly rare. 1 + 1 = 2 is not a mathematical proof, for example. You need to go further down from that to get to an actual proof. So, that is how you prove something legally, too. And that's when a good legal document comes. What a good legal document will do is it will show why 1 + 1 = 2. And that is what this document does. So props to the judge who wrote this. I don't know who she is. I don't even know her name. But I can probably look it up. I'm going to have a link to the actual finding in the VOD. But she actually shows her work on how she comes to these conclusions. And the first, like, God, I don't even know, like 70, 80 pages of the document is her going through these steps, proving it. Now, that's actually really important because by doing that prep work, she has made her case very strong. She has legally proven her findings. So people will appeal this, and we'll talk about that later. But you can't come in and say, well, hang on. And a lawyer can't try to appeal her on the basis of the fact that she didn't do any of this work in order to define this. She did all that work. She showed all that work. She has the legal proof. Her findings are a part of hard case law at this point. Now, note that I say the findings, not the results, not what she does with the findings, but the findings. This is unmutable, and the odds of anyone changing this are minuscule. Okay? That's why she did it. That's the whole reason she did her due diligence there, was so that this would serve as the baseline. Okay? So that's awesome. The second reason she did that was because I guarantee you with 100% certainty that both companies will appeal this, and this will hit the Circuit of Appeals. Guaranteed. I'll explain why later. The trial showed, I'm just going to read from my notes on this part. The trial showed that Apple is engaging in anti-competitive conduct under California's competition laws. Now, the court has concluded that Apple's anti-steering provisions... Pause. Let's explain what anti-steering means for a second. Let's just use the actual example. Let's assume for a moment that you are putting out an app onto Apple. If you do so, you do not have the right or ability to advertise anything external previous to this lawsuit with regards to paying for that app. So if you put out Alex Korobiniki's Crafting Adventures 57, which is I hear is actually much better than 56, and you put that on the App Store, you were not allowed to have a link to like PayPal or a link to your subscription service or a thing to be able to buy DLC or anything of that goes outside of Apple's own internal infrastructure. Okay? That's anti-steering. It's not quite a monopoly, and we'll talk about why that's not a monopoly in a minute. What it is someone preventing you from steering off the course you want them to be on. Hence the term, okay? I had to quack. Nom. Now, so, getting back to the statement. The court concludes that Apple's anti-steering provisions hide critical information from consumers and illegally stifle consumer choice. When coupled with Apple's incipient antitrust violations, these anti-steering provisions are anti-competitive, and a nationwide remedy to eliminate those provisions is warranted. That's the first and easiest way they're going to appeal this. I will talk about this a little bit later, but the actual finding is that this global company was found in violation of anti-competition laws at the state level, and therefore at the national level an impact will be had. This is a national finding and a federally opposed ruling, which they can easily appeal, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because, I mean, they have a case there. It's a really easy case. You're trying to apply state law to federal. There you go, right? That's the case. So that's the appeal, the biggest way that Apple is going to try to appeal this, and may even succeed. We'll see. Now let's go ahead and gum into one of the second ways that they're going to try to appeal this. This is not hard law. Now, to explain what I mean by that a little bit. There's no precedence and there's no ruling that showcases this. Now, I've talked before about how law is about, here in the States, law is about building on previous cases. That's why people talk so much about precedents. That's why people talk so much about case law. That's why people talk so much about can you cite example. Because the previous iterations of the previous showcasings more each layer adds another layer of hardness to the law's application, right? And this is what we call an equitable finding, which is just the court saying, well, I don't have a case law, and I don't have a previous example, and I don't have any precedents, but this is what I'm saying. By simple virtue of that alone, this can be appealed, because it's not hard law. Now, you can still appeal hard law, it's just a lot harder to do that. So let's talk about antitrust law, and hang on, let's look at what TIGs are saying. No, you are correct about your first statement, Tigzar. I'm actually going to talk about that more later, because what was changed is actually much more minor than most people are reporting on. But if you decided to put out Alex Korobeniki's Culinary Adventures 57, and put a link in that to an external payment site, Apple could just decide to not list your game. And it's just not on the Apple Store. And they don't really have to justify that. They could just... By the way, since we're here, since you already brought it up, we'll go ahead and talk about something further down the line. One of the things that a lot of people are saying is, oh my god, Apple's losing tons of money. No. The ruling change is literally removing a sentence and a half of the DPLA of Apple's development thing, right? And the whole reason I'm mentioning that is because that allows them... So Alex can put a link to his PayPal or a link to his subscription fee thing externally. That is now, currently, as of this moment in time, allowed until it's appealed. The thing is, you can't put a pay button in there. Now, if you don't understand the significance of that, how many of you have ever played any mobile game ever? I'll go ahead and raise my hands on that, because I obviously have. And if you have, you'll notice that there's a button you hit that just kind of says, pay for microtransaction. You know, do you want to buy this? That's a button in the Apple OS that goes through the Apple Store that pays through the Apple process. You can't put a button there to pay through anything other than Apple's format. So if you want an actual button in the game to press to buy something, it still has to go through Apple. Make sense? So that's the big change. That's the results. Anyways, so antitrust law. One of the things that people tend to bring up is, oh, this is clearly a monopoly. So one of the reasons that monopolies are so difficult to prove and antitrust laws are so difficult to bring, even to larger companies who have a gargantuan market share like Google or Steam, is because you have to define the market. And when you say, well, Steam's market is online digital sales, no. When I say define market legally, you have to go several layers below that to define a legal market. And then you have to show that once we have defined this specific market, that they hold a monopoly holding on that market. Now, the court, remember the due diligence? Remember all the work they did to prove this? Proved legally that the market in question here is, and I wrote it down. I want to make sure I don't screw up my terminology on this one. Hang on. Where did I write it down? Digital mobile gaming transactions. That's the market. Has to be digital, has to be mobile, has to be gaming, and it's actually the market of the transactions, specifically. That's the market, okay? Apple does not have a monopoly over that. They don't. That's just duh. And having legally done all that work to prove that is part of why they did all that legal work to prove that. Because Apple does not have a monopoly over that. Nobody does. Let's leave that at the door, Kira. Let's not get into the weeds. There's a lot to discuss here, and I want to stay focused on this because this is actually a fairly complex case. I've actually reported on this a few times before, and I know I'm not the only one. So, we've defined the market. Cool. They've done the factual inquiry. Cool. We have proven that they don't have the monopoly over it. Cool. Now, here's where things get funny. So, Epic is an idiot, all right? Now, I'm actually pretty anti-Epic Store. I'm pretty open about that. Screw them. But their legal team probably did one of the worst jobs they possibly could of making this case. No, really. That's not just my opinion. The judge herself repeatedly in this document, it's hysterical to read through, actually mentions several times how much Epic failed to make their case. They are specifically called out for overreach, among other things. Because what Epic is going for, this is funny, Epic was trying to push for a situation in which they wouldn't have to pay any money whatsoever, 0%, what do they call it, shelf fee, 0% shelf fee to Apple. That's what they wanted. That's stupid. I'm sorry. I'm not particularly pro-Apple either, but the idea of trying to legally prove that you shouldn't pay a store for shelf space, and this applies digitally just as well as physically, is nonsense. I'm not even getting to the broken contract. That's actually really cut and dry. That is so cut and dry that it receives like one page of the of this 180-page document, because that was something that you could prove to even legally and just say, yeah, no, you're in the wrong. Epic was in the wrong on that contract. They are immediately ordered to pay Apple for all of the funds that they are failed to do during that contract breach. So yeah, why is that stupid? Okay, all right. Let's go with a physical example to try and make my point here, Mo Elvis. So let's say you own a grocery store, and let's say someone walks up and puts a product on your shelf that they're going to sell for their money and then leaves, and now you are losing that space to some rando who just walked in and is now selling something that you have no part of. You have to pay for the maintenance, you have to lose the space, you know, all that's fun stuff, right? Now, obviously, this doesn't quite apply the same way digitally, because digital thing is a whole different thing than physical thing, but many of the same tenets still apply equally. Because what Epic wanted was to be able to sell games on the Apple Store through the Apple interface for free. That's what they were going for. That was their big goal. That's stupid. And again, not on Apple's side here, but Epic was just aiming for the freaking moon and missed. Overreach, as stated legally. Now, I point this out because if Epic had gone for a reduced fee, they would have had a much stronger case. If Epic had gone for trying to showcase the disparity of income with this fee versus other things and blah, 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 they would have had a stronger case. But they were like, no, we want it all for free forever because we're idiots. So, by the way, I jotted this down, so I'm going to share it. Epic claimed that Apple held a monopoly. They were going for the anti-Sherman law. Held a monopoly over, remember the definition? Digital mobile gaming transactions. Now again, no they don't. That any moron can prove that. But the best part was, in order to really make this point, Epic claimed that they were losing so much money that their company, I forget, how do they phrase it? I didn't write it down. That Epic was actually in financial troubles and difficulties, and Epic was, oh God, we're just so poor. I don't have a hat. Pretend my dice bag is a hat. Just, oh please, sir, I just like a little more porridge because we're losing so much money to this 30% fee. And the court proved legally the other 8 methods, 8 distinct methods that Epic makes money that have absolutely nothing to do with the Apple Store and don't even touch the market, even ignoring Apple. Because remember, they make money on the digital mobile gaming transactions regardless of Apple. Right? Like you get that on the PlayStation, you get that on a PC or whatever, right? And they proved that even if they lost that entire market, the other 8 sources of income they still have would be fine. By the way, I wrote them down. This is funny. They've got the Fortnite crew, which is a thing. There's the upfront fee for the Save the World thing. There's external code. There's in-game advertising. There's cross promotions. Apparently they make a lot of money about that. You ever wonder why Star Wars got in there? Third-party codes, hardware bundles, and partnerships. Now, that's all a super summarized detail, but the court, once again, proved legally that those other 8 markets existed for Epic. This then moves on to the next thing. Now, I don't know how many of you were really following this. How many of you noticed how Epic was pushing this whole narrative of exactly what I was just making fun of? Oh, we're so poor. And we're doing this for the little guys. We, this gigantic mega company of evil, who is partially owned by China. Sorry, I shouldn't say that like that. That's right. Who is partially owned by Tencent. That's actually much worse than just saying China. We're out for the little guy, and we want to defend you guys because we've got this narrative that we're pushing really hard. You remember that, right? You remember that? That actually has a name. It's called Project Liberty. This is funny because the court dragged Project Liberty into the light on this one and actually shared, because they have to, because subpoenas, shared internal documents about how Epic was going out of their way to drum up Project Liberty and the specific ways they were lying in their marketing campaign in order to push that narrative. Screw China. Taiwan's a country. All right. It's just... The actual response... Hang on. I gotta find this. Hang on. There was an actual tweet about this that that Tim Sweeney put out about this, which is just funny to read. Hang on. I gotta find this. There it is. I found it. And I quote, this is the CEO of Epic. Today's ruling isn't a win for developers or consumers. Epic is... Epic is fighting for fair competition among in-app payment methods and app stores for 1 billion consumers. Fortnite will return to the iOS App Store when and where Epic can offer in-payment in fair competition with Apple in-app payment, passing along the savings to consumers. Thank you so much to everyone who put so much time and effort into the battle over fair competition on digital platforms, and thanks especially to the court for managing a very complex case in a speedy timeline. We will fight on! Word for word! Can't make that up. Reminder. They don't want fair competitive prices. They want free. By their own standings, by their own statements. Remember I made that point earlier? Remember they made that point? Just, hang on, I'm not even done. I'm not even done with all this crap. Okay. So, you're probably thinking, why did the court rule, the judge's ruling specifically call out the Liberty, what do we call it? Project Liberty. Why'd they specifically bring up Project Liberty? They were basically pulling that up to disprove it in its entirety, because one of the things the Epic lawyers were doing was trying to use Project Liberty as a legal case, and the judge is saying, no, you're a moron. The court legally found, I keep pointing that out because that's important when it comes to legal matters, they legally found that if Epic won their case, they would make billions of dollars on it. If they actually had successfully won this case. This was a billions dollars case, and they proved this legally, regardless of whatever narrative they push. Now you're probably thinking, this judge sounds kind of pro-Apple. No. So then she starts talking about the DPLA. This is when so I jumped ahead in my notes. This is when I mentioned you can't have the in-app purchases, right? You can't have the button there. And that's part of that thing. Epic insists you cannot charge for shelf space. Court states that Epic did not successfully provide evidence of sufficient backing by developers in general. That's another important thing, by the way. It's another thing. So one of Epic's pushes, one of their narrative they were pushing in the courtroom, which is hysterical, of all the places to try this, don't try to prove something in a case where they have to legally prove stuff. Don't try to lie in front of a judge. It usually doesn't go all that great. So you have way more money than Epic does. So they were trying to say that they were doing this on behalf of a large number of developers. One of their legal pushes was that there were a huge number of developers who wanted the 0% fund, the free shelf space. They never proved that. They were incapable of proving that because it's a lie. And the court found legally that was a lie, and therefore that entire argument and all the weight it might add to the ruling, gone. Then they talk about the DPLA. Now I don't remember what it stands for, but it's the thing you sign when you produce an app to go on the App Store. Okay, that's the summary. The DPLA is what allows and disallows certain things. I already talked about that. You can't have the in-app purchases. All purchases through that have to go through the App Store. They charge for shelf space, right? That's the DPLA in a massive summary, and it skips over all sorts of other things that I'm not even going to touch on. The DPLA has actually changed several times during this court case. But part of the reason why, and I have to share this because this just got a laugh out of me, and I quote, this is from the judge's own words in her legal ruling, and I quote, "Nothing other than legal action seems to motivate Apple to reconsider pricing and reduce rates." What we in the business refer to as burn. If you have to... Oh, Jesus Christ. If the only thing that convinces you to be less of a dick of a company is every time the law gets involved, maybe think about that. So, how does this work in anyone's favor? So, one of the quotes they have there slaps you. Antitrust law does not end with the Sherman Act. That is actually a semi-repeated phrase. Multiple times. So Kira brought up a thing about antitrust law earlier, which I didn't want to touch on, and I still don't. But the thing is, most people seem to think that the Sherman Act is the beginning and the end of antitrust laws. It's actually not. That's like the highest step and the most extreme step. If you have actually violated the Sherman Act, you done screwed up, boy. And that's, of course, why Epic was going for it, because it's a big attention-grabbing stunt. That was stupid. They should have gone for any of the other anti-competition or anti-steering laws, which Apple is most assuredly in violation of, rather than saying that they had a really highest possible standard monopoly over a market, which is, as we've already established, stupid. So, she then nevertheless indicates that Apple acknowledges Epic wanted to open an independent Apple Store, which disallowed it. And as a competitor who claims injury, Epic must show three things. Legally speaking, they must prove that Apple threatens the incipient violation of antitrust law. They must prove that they violate the policy or spirit of one of those laws because its effects are comparable to or the same as the violation of the law. I'll talk about that in a second. Or three, they must otherwise have a situation which significantly threatens or harms competition. Now, I want to talk about that second point really quick. This is something that doesn't come up a lot. Usually doesn't hit criminal cases, but comes up a lot in corporate and civil cases. There is a legal standard here in the States to prove that even if you do not violate the law, if your actions have resulted in the same effects as if you violated the law, you can still be held legally viable, or not viable. You could still be legally, I can't think of the word all of a sudden, responsible for that, right? That's not the word, but you get my point. And so that's accountable. Thank you. Accountable for that. And so that's what she's trying to state here is that, oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. They have to prove either you violated the law, you have done the same as violating the law, or you've done something that is in violation of the spirit of the law. That's the three general tests. These tests are very useful outside of existing laws, per the court's finding. Refer to those other documents. Apple argues that the separate, so that this shouldn't be considered outside or under the purviews of Sherman Law and should not be considered under the UCL specifically. The court disagrees on this point, specifically cites the precedent with Caltech. I'm not going to bore you with that right now. Or Celtech, excuse me. And recognizes that even if you do not violate the law, the impact of your action was identical to law violation impact. Once again, found. However, because this is a result, not the finding, and I keep defining this, this is going to be appealed. Guaranteed, Apple is going to try to appeal this point. Because what the finding is, or I'm saying that wrong, what the results of this are, gotta use my terminology correctly, what the results of this are is that Apple has not violated any law, but they have done the same as violate the law. And that is a super soft ruling, and that is absolutely going to be appealed. Meanwhile, Epic was batting for the moon and massively failed on every level. This is hysterical, by the way, because the court, independent of Epic's case, finds that Apple has violated anti-steering points. Now, I'm making that distinction. I don't know if I've really made this clear yet or not, because I'm kind of hitting my notes sort of out of order. I apologize. Epic never tried to push for anti-steering. They never even touched on it. Remember, they were pushing for the highest severity, the Sherman Act, way at the top. Bam! They never tried to push for something like the anti-steering thing, which Apple is very clearly in violation of. And I quote, Apple proved internally and legally that push notifications and emails are the most effective marketing strategies to keep users coming back, and Apple controls both avenues and blocks devs from using them. That is anti-steering. Done. Right there. Done and proven. This was not a part of the case. This was something that came up during the case. Because Epic... You can finish the sentence here. So, therefore, this is why the court has ruled that this has to change. And I'm not even at the contract thing yet. And why they have to change the DPLA in order to allow the external thing, and blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm looking at my notes here. There's one other thing really quick. One of Apple's biggest arguments, this is so funny. One of Apple's biggest arguments was that the Apple ecosystem would be significantly impacted if they were to lose the 30%. Now, this is funny for several reasons to me. Because the point that it was made legally, the court found that Apple's ecosystem would not be significantly impacted if they suddenly charged 0% for shelf space. Reminder, the court, and admittedly me, do not think that the shelf space should be 0% fee. But even if they were suddenly to give away free shelf space, the court found that the Apple's ecosystem and their financial situation would not be significantly impacted by that change. And again, that's important because that was one of Apple's biggest arguments, was that, oh my God, we're doomed. We're gonna go down. We're barely pauper. I can only afford 1 carrot, Your Honor, please. This is my lunch right here. Is this 1 tiny carrot? If I lose that 30%, which is bullcrap. This is when I note that you may have a button or a link or advertising to methods outside of Apple's in-store. That is the current finding. You may not use an actual in-app button. You may not use anything for purchasing through Apple. Anything within the app has to go through Apple or link to something external, which then can not have to link through Apple. That's the big change, obviously. Epic pushing for 0... Yeah, I already jotted that note. Yeah, no kidding, Alex. So then the final thing, and this really is just an anecdote, like a footnote after the end of all of this nonsense, is Epic claimed that they aren't liable to contract, so they just freely violated it. This is so stupid on so many levels, but my personal favorite is that in the court rulings, the judge points out that one of Epic's biggest arguments for this is that an adhesion contract is not legally viable. Epic uses adhesion contracts. So, Epic is 100% in breach of contract. Pay up. Who did you hire for this, Epic? Did you go down to the I-5 and just say, hey, I need some lawyers? Anybody? Grab some bums off the street? Who knows? They might have been lawyers. I don't know. The way things are going. Oh my God. You had an easy case, Epic, and you screwed it up on literally every level. That's the results, by the way. That's it. That's everything. There's gonna be appeals. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. A lot of stuff was legally proven. That's pretty much gonna sit there and stay there. We never called it that when I lived there, Ross. Oh my God. So Lionel Hutz is just a bunch of hobos down from the I-5? That makes so much sense. Oh no, absolutely Kara White knows. But again, this is just really stupid of them on every level. They had an easy case. They had they effectively had an open and shut case as long as they A, didn't shoot for the Sherman Act, and B, didn't violate the contract. If they had done those two things, I guarantee Epic would have won this. You'll notice that one of the two final rulings, because there's only really two rulings, one is that the violation of contract, the other is that they're in violation of California's Anti-Competition Act, which means they have to change the DPLA. If they had aimed for this from the beginning, they would have just won, and that would have been that. And might have actually been able to lower the percentage from 30% to something lower, but they didn't. Do they get a second chance? So yes, both Epic and Apple have the opportunity to appeal this. Again, I guarantee they both will. This will assuredly hit the Circuit of Appeals. We'll see where that goes, because that can go anywhere. As I mentioned earlier, the problem is that trying to apply state law federally is something that's a lot harder to do than it sounds, so that'll probably get appealed. And Epic will assuredly appeal the contract violation, because they're morons. Apple will probably appeal the soft ruling, which, like I said, doesn't have case law. So, generally speaking, a soft ruling almost always is appealed by default. Now, here's an interesting thought. If they appeal this and if Apple, let me be clear about this. If Apple appeals this and loses, some of you may not know this, but legal precedent can't just be from a ruling. To have hard legal precedent, legally defined precedent, it has to actually be a part of the Court of Appeals. It has to already be appealed, and then the finding of the appeal becomes precedent. So if Apple appeals this and loses, then this will actually define precedent and case law for applying a state law to a company that is in violation of the state law federally. I just explained that to KotOR. It's soft, it gets appealed. If it's renewed, it's now hard. That's pretty much the path. Yeah, I fully expect Epic will double down on Sherman because they're stupid, as I keep indicating, and they will lose that battle because that is an open and shut case. There's nothing to debate there. There is no case for that. None. That's it. That's the case. Epic's trying to reach for the stars with the catapult. Yep, that is a wonderful quote to summarize this whole nonsense situation. Yeah. Anyways. So. Let's do this. Let's do this. Yeah, no kidding, Alex. There is some legitimate politics involved with this, and one of the things that might happen, just to talk about it for a second, it is nuclear, but the nuclear doesn't throw it. It's just it's nuclear powered. One of the things that might happen is Apple might gamble on challenging this into the appeals, on the idea that the appeal court may let it go and just give it to Apple, specifically to avoid setting precedent. That has happened before. There have been cases where the Court of Appeals has actually said, no, we don't want to set precedent on that, and they have the option to push it to another circuit, or give it to one side outright, or actually dismiss it in some really severe cases. We'll see. I'm going to be watching this one, because this has the possibility of affecting a lot of corporate law here in the States. So thanks for that, Apple and Epic, for both of you being morons. And arguing over billions. God, I just want to smack them. Okay. Music. That's all I got. That's everything. So, one of the things that several people requested of me, and is something I've committed to, is I have not listened to any Final Fantasy 4, 5, or 6's remaster music until I do it live, right? That's going to be a live watching, because people wanted to experience it with me, which is cool. I'm with that. I don't really do reaction videos, but this is kind of personal. No, I've never heard of it, Trax. Yeah. So let me pause this soundtrack and pull this one over here. Oh, I can find plenty of people to smack, Mr. Red. You watch. So this is going to sound weird for a second while I set this up. Give me just a second. There we go. Yep. Sorry. Knew that was going to happen. I apologize. That's why I was talking over it. There we go. So yeah, I haven't heard any of this crap yet. So I'm going to pull up to, looks like here. And the rest of those are sound effects. Now, of course, none of it's labeled in English. I mean, it is, but... Okay, hang on. Let's actually redo. Let's do this a different way. I love this. The file name is in English. The whatever it's called, the data, the file data is in Japanese. So I'm gonna have to pull in the songs one by one to know which song I'm listening to. So we have a choice, okay? And I want your opinion because this is kind of a you thing as well as a me thing. Do I listen to the songs I love the most last, or do I listen to the songs I hate the most last? And if you see the logic, it's like, have they taken a song I hate and made something good with it? And have they taken a song I love and made something good with it? So which one should I do last? Is the question here. Because I got to start somewhere. Start with the hate. In-game appearance, I can think about that. Figure that out. We could do that as well. But let's start with hate. Let's start with hate. There's only a few songs in 4 I'm not really fond of. There's like 5. And then we'll kind of go chronologically. I'm going to do an audio test on something that isn't this. So tell me how the audio is. What's a good song like this? Tell me how the audio is. Because I can turn it up, down, in between. I got all sorts of options. Obviously, this is FF3. Bit too loud? I can turn it down a bit. Give me a second. How's this? I was gonna say, the song hasn't even gotten loud yet. So how's this? This is a 25% volume here. I told you, Bragan. We're up to 2 hours so far. I told you. We good here? Is this good? Good volume? I know, Ashlam. I've already analyzed 1 through 3. It's cool. It's cool. I got this. I have actually analyzed music before. I just don't do it on the show all that often. Okay, so. Alright, so let's go back to 4. Back up to 4 here. Alright. I'm so nervous. Some of you, most of you probably know. Anybody who's listening to this probably knows this. I literally learned music on FF4. Literally. I had a little micro recorder. And I held it up to the TV and I'd record the songs. And while I was at school, you know, doing something more important than actually learning whatever nonsense they were trying to teach me with their standardized testing, I would listen to the music and I would slow it down because there was a slow down button on the thing, and I would just pay attention to how Nobuo Uematsu made the music and how he designed it, and that's how I learned music. That's how I learned music theory. Orioles, probably Sierra. That was probably Oblivion music. So, hate. Let's start with hate. So, songs I don't care for in Final Fantasy IV. The town song, we've got right there, Welcome to Our Town, I'm not a fan of. Fanned of? I say that a lot. Fond of, fan of. We've also got Fat Chocobo, which is kind of whatever. And, Hey Sid, I've never liked Hey Sid. Or Palom and Porum. I think that's actually it. Everything, oh no, and the Dwarf song. So all of those songs are just kind of meh, right? So we'll start with those. So let's start with Town. I'm actually nervous. Okay, so it's immediately better. I noticed that, Bobatrix. It doesn't hurt my ears like the 3D version does, though. I'm with it. It's not amazing, but they've definitely taken something with it, which is good. They've done something with it. Oh, your second verse, sorry. Second verse is way better. What is that in the background? I don't know what that instrument is, but that worked really well as like a harmony underneath the main thought, just because that was like a roaming tune instead of that. But that was good. I liked that. Sorry, I should do that. You're right, Imperial Star Destroyer. Let's give you a comparison. So here's the original. I think I actually have the DS version on here. It's just really basic. It's really, really basic. It's like a 30-second loop. I don't have that version, do I? I mean, this is it, right? Like, this is just, okay. It's just unmemorable. And as I mentioned before, the DS version hurts my ears, so forgive me for not playing that one. Well, I guess I could. Fine, due diligence. We've already had a 2-hour Loreweek. Let's do it! Let's do it. Let's really commit to this. Hang on. Let me pull up the I'm just going to pull it up on YouTube. Because I don't think I actually have the FF4 soundtrack on my computer. Town. There it is. This is the DS version. Yeah, that just... I'm sorry, I'm just going to stop that. They did something... So I've done a lot of work with audio lately, and I don't know the words, but there's a way to polish a waveform so that it doesn't hit certain frequencies, and they didn't do that. So yeah, it comes across as harsh, as several people in chat have said. It comes across as too harsh because they didn't polish that particular instrument, or they didn't polish the finished result. And so instead, it grates. You notice, to go back to this one really quick. Hang on, skip that a little. They're using a very similar instrument with that wood whistle, but they've actually polished the sound file so it doesn't grate on your ears the same way. They also completely removed one of the understrings, which I think works pretty well. So, that's Town. So let's see, what's the next one I said? Fat Chocobo. Do I even have that here? I mean, everyone knows Fat Chocobo. I play this all the time on my stream. And that's Fat Chocobo. Now that's funny, but it's not a good song, right? That's why I put this in the list. Give me 1 second here, because so the DS version sounds awful. Yes, this is the Anthem theme song right here. That's it. That's the loop. That is it. That's the loop. That's all there is to that. Let's hear the new version. It's very marchy, isn't it? They're really... They're using... I can't remember what that's called. You have a brass instrument and you deliberately elongate as you're playing it to get that... Like right there. And yeah, they're using... That's actually to good effect. I mean, it's not a great song, but they're really dragging that out to make it sound like it's a big fat... Which actually works pretty well. Still not great, not gonna lie, but, you know, that's something. So hang on. So now we've got... what's the next one that was a... Oh yeah, Hey Sid. So... Hey Sid is it's another one of those... It's not a terrible song, but it's just not my thing. In fact, I'm not even sure it's on this list. It's not. I need to figure... Hang on. Give me a second. This up here. Hey Sid, there it is. funny, because this plays pretty often in the game. It's just kind of a neutral song for me. I do like this section right here. Oh, absolutely, Ashley. So that's the original. Oh, Hyperion, if I had to choose. Easy answer, Drax. I love that. I've got the Hyperion right there. So let me find Hey Sid on the DS version. They're kind of out of order, forgive me, so I have to just manually look here. Chocobo, Red Bomb, Theme of Sorrow. Come on, where's Hey Sid? Is Hey Sid not on here? Is Hey Sid? Oh my god, is it not on here? Let's see it. Oh my god. Did it get renamed? Troya Airship, Talon Forum, Long Way to Go, Visited. Oh, this is probably it. Boss Sid. There you go. There's that fat trumpet again. Really strange horns in the DS version in general. It's a little loud. I mean, it's not bad. It's probably one of the better DS versions, so I'm not going to yell at it. But the new version sounds like... Oh my god, that's such a good idea. They went Spanish with it. That was a good decision. Yeah, mariachi. That's exactly the thing I was thinking. Then we push the strings for the second section. This sounds like a Kingdom Hearts song in a good way. Sid. Oh god, it's FF12. That's good. I like that. Holy crap. I like that. Holy, sorry. That's good counterpoint. You notice how, unlike most of these songs, they don't change the second verse all up that one. Instead, they just re-emphasize it in a different tenor. Like, they pull it down, and it's like an extended bridge section of just pausing before getting back to the main theme, which actually works really well for a song that's already as upbeat and loud, because of the trumpets, as Sid's theme is. That's good. Okay, so, Palom and Porum. So the original... I mean, it's not bad. You'll notice I keep saying that about FF4 soundtrack. I'm not sure any FF4 song is actually bad. But it's just silly, because that's the point. It's the twins. For those of you who don't remember, it's the little twins who are like 8 or whatever. It's a silly song. You know, there's usually a silly song within the Final Fantasy series. So, that's the original. The DS version is right here. I don't like what they did with the tuba in this one. Sounds very Secret of Mana-y, though. I'm actually kind of okay with this one. And that's it. So, new version. Got a weird distorted guitar under there. This sounds mostly unchanged, if I'm being honest. Very Mana-y, though. This sounds super like Secret of Mana music. Yeah, that's it. I'm not as with it as with the others, but, you know, okay, that's just playing it straight. Okay, whatever. One more for the didn't like. I say hate. I shouldn't use a word like that. And that is the dwarf. And I gotta find the right dwarf song. There's actually two dwarf songs. One I really like and one I don't. I think this is the dwarf song I don't care for. Yeah. I don't know. This song just kind of grates on me. It's plodding. Like, it's just, I get that he's going for the dwarven aesthetic, but it just sounds like a song that's just kind of... And it's always bugged me ever since I first heard it. It's never stopped. I mean, the dwarves are awesome. Value. Can't wait till we get to chapter 7 and we see a whole bunch of dwarves in the theater. But yeah, that's it. That's it. In the DS version, I think this is one of the few songs I like better in the DS version, I think. Which is this one. Yeah. They didn't do much with it, but I do prefer this, just because it sounds less plodding. Because you notice how they really emphasize the brass section more, instead of having it be this kind of low undercurrent kind of thing. It's much more melody. It's much more forefront. Still the same song, of course. Well, it hasn't come out yet, Dakota. Although I agree. So, and then that's it. So, new version, which is this one. Already love it. That actually sounds castle-y. I actually have a playlist called Castle for a certain type of music, you know, medieval trumpeting kind of thing. I do like what they're doing with the brass here. Yeah, it sounds like a castle. I don't know what else to call that. Like a Guardia Castle in Chrono Trigger, to use an example. Oh yeah, the brass sounds so much better in all the remaster music. Just so much better across the board. This sounds like a tournament. Like a jousting tournament or something. I'm actually kind of with that. Like, it's not super amazing. They didn't do much with it, but I do think those little touches help. It makes it sound like a castle theme instead of a plotting theme, you know? I'm with that. Oh, by the way, in case you don't know what I mean by that, hang on, let me pull up the castle playlist and just really quick. Like, there's a certain tenor to what I consider a castle song, right? This is Chrono Trigger, obviously. Like, I don't know how to describe this because I'm an idiot, but you know what I mean, right? When I speak of a castle tone. Lufia 2 has several castle songs as well, actually. Or yeah, Baron. Yeah, just... This is another good one. This is also in the castle playlist. Clearly castle-y, right? Or, Lufia 2, you know? There's just a style to that. Anyways, moving on. Sorry, this is going to take forever to go through. I hope you don't mind. If you do, I guess you're not watching, and I got nothing else going on today. So screw it! Let's do it! I want to do this. And if you don't want to do it with me, that's totally cool. I need to find the soundtrack again, because that's it for those. Now we're just going to go through, you know, narratively. Whoops, wrong button. Sorry, give me a second. There we go. Okay, so we've got... So, what's the first song we hear? Unfortunately or not, the first song we hear is the Prelude. God, that sucks, Ventures. Did you save everything? Is everything cool? No, that was the last one. Calbrinica de Danse. Why did I call it that? I made a remix of that song called that, and it stuck in my head because I'm a moron. I like that song. There's a caveat with that, but we'll get there. The first song you hear in the game is the Prelude, which is, if you give me a moment, on here somewhere. That's not it. Where's the Prelude? Where's the Prelude? There it is. Now, the Prelude has been a big thing in FF since 1. Kind of stopped being a thing at 7, specifically, was the last one. They really emphasized the Prelude. Thank God you saved the computer, Ventures. I do understand flooding very much. I actually used to live with flooding on a regular basis, so I sympathize. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Yeah, they also brought this back for 12, which was kind of awesome. But 1 through 7, this was a big deal. But 1 through 3, if you remember, it was just this. One of the things that FF4 did, which was very smart in my opinion, is it added an actual melody to this. And I will never forget what it felt like suddenly hearing... This is still among my favorite Prelude songs. It just nails it. It uses the strings perfectly. It's not too loud or too piercing or too overt or too techno or whatever. It just hits it. This song is actually the song I think of when I think of Final Fantasy. The concept, the phrase, the franchise, the setting, the theme, the tones. This is the original. A little long compared to the ones we've been listening to. The DS version... Now, I kind of like what they did with the harps here. I'll give you that, DS version. I think the harps work pretty well there. Did you have renter's insurance, Ventures, to be able to help cover any of that? Because I didn't when I had to deal with that. I do now. I can afford it now. Isn't that a weird thing? I can afford to not have to pay too much for tax. Anyways. Now, I think the DS version loses a bit when the theme comes in. It's not like the original right here. I think it's trying a little bit too hard. And I don't think that whistle, that woodwind, works as well here. Which is a shame, because I think they did a great job with the harp. I do. Of the originals, Imperial Star Destroyer. That's why I'm doing it in... I'm giving you the DS version just for comparison, to see how they did it. Because why not? Don't worry, when we get to 5, I won't be able to do that, because there's only the 2 versions. Same with 6. I could play the GBA, but there's no reason to do that. So... that's the DS version, then it loops, which leads us to... I'm going to turn it up slightly. Really liking that harp. It reminds me of Seven's Prelude, actually. I don't like that. It's the first one I don't like. It's a little too harsh. It's a little too loud. It's a little too piercing. It's a shame, because if you ignore the flute for a second and listen to the strings. Like, if you could remove the flute. Just focus on the strings in the background there. That is the first remaster song I have not cared for. Very first. Which I guess is impressive. But still. That's a shame. Alright, so the next thing we hear is one of the best songs in the game. We're going to do the... like, I'm going to take Takoida's idea here. I'm going to do this narratively. So the next song we hear is one of my favorite songs of all time. I freaking love this song. It's also technically one of the last dungeon songs. Just starts immediately to the drum beat, the horns, the military feel of it, the almost tragedy that you can feel in the way that he uses, I forget what it's called, but he does a thing where he pulls the notes down. I don't know the technical term. in order to indicate a sorrowful thing, but he's using strong, brassy, marchy notes and music in a sorrowful tone, and it's brilliant the way he does this. Like this is a dirge, not a dirge. This is a funeral march, and it even has this part, which is the crisis moment, the crisis bridge. I've actually done a remake of this song, and it's one of my only remakes of mine that I've done that I ever have actually really like. So that's the original. Sorry to gush. Love that song. Let's hear the DS versions. Now, we've already talked about how the DS version uses brass. Not yet, Retro Justice. Way more understated, as you can tell. I do like what they do with the strings a bit better here. They also understate the drums, the percussion layer of this. It's going to be settled out of chord tracks, yeah, guaranteed at this point. I just do not like the DS version's brass at all. I never have. I'm sorry. They do some other good stuff. They use good strings. They use good harps. Most of the softer instruments work better in the DS version. Like, this just sounds weird to me. There's no impact to it. There's no power to the notes. They're too... They take too long to start, and they take too long to stop. So there's no impact for the notes. Sorry, Micromono. Yeah, let's make it very clear what I'm doing here. Thank you for pointing that out. We're going to be here a minute. Let's hear the new one. Super nervous, because this is one of the big ones. One of my favorite songs of all time. That's a march. Really loving what they do with the brass and the remasters. All four of them. Oh, another layer of percussion. Do you hear that? And there's another layer of strings. You're funny, Salder. No. No. Oh, God. They're using a woodwind. They're using a woodwind as an accompaniment to emphasize. Do you hear that? And there's a piano there, too. I'm actually crying. Listen to how the strings, they're using another, I forget what it's called, they're emphasizing the strings, so instead of being a soft accompaniment, it has a more impactful, harshing tone to function as the melody. Works really well. God damn. Oh my, I could just keep listening to that, but I gotta keep going. That's really good. Wow. That's some work they put into that. Okay, so after that scene, the next thing we do is we go through Baron Castle. And we're playing as the Dark Knight Cecil, and we have to turn in the crystal and talk to the king. So let's get the castle. I actually kind of briefly played it earlier. Where is it? I know, Ash LeBride. There's so much emotion under there. So this is what I consider the castle theme. Like when I think of the castle tone, this is what comes to mind. You notice there's actually 3 counterbalancing tones there that literally make it sound like someone's marching. There's the horns in the background, there's the way the strings go back and forth, and there's the way the percussion is bouncing. And all 3 of them do this, basically. They each have a moment, and then they're both quiet, and then they go up like that. I'm doing it wrong because I only have 2 hands instead of 3, but you get the idea. Notice it's not completely negative, too. There's that one little section just to emphasize a little bit of upper tone, I forget what it's called, in order to show that this isn't substantially negative, right? This isn't just a tragedy type of song. I know I'm screwing up my terminology. I don't care right now. Here's the DS version. Now, this is a brass-heavy song, so... You know where this is going. It's a brass-heavy song in the DS version. So... It's not bad. It isn't. I would say this is one of the average DS versions. Excuse me. I do prefer the SNES. It's very rarely I prefer the DS over the SNES in terms of music. But, I mean, you see how it's lacking for this section. I do like that strings. I've always liked the DS's strings. They do good stuff with it. Like here. So, let's hear the new version of Castle. Love that percussion. It's really deep, kind of in the background. So you hear what they're doing with the strings there. Rather than the impact, they're actually specifically straying them in. So that part of the song is much more gradual, which actually works well as a contrast to the horns, I think. Adding a flute, because you gotta have a woodwind in there. Love that percussion. Yeah, it drags. There's a term for that when you're supposed to do that, when you're supposed to make a note last longer than the actual note on the page. And it's specifically for string instruments. I think there's no second section. I think this is just a repeat. Yeah, this is just a repeat. So apparently there's no second stanza or no second whatever for that one. So whatever. So we've done all that. Everything's cool. Then Rosa shows up. And Rosa's like, I love you, and that's my only character trait. If I ever remake FF4, I'm going to make Rosa an actual character. I'm just saying. So Rosa shows up. And she sounds like this. I don't even know the words, Lord Herman. I just try to make it make sense. Now, I used to not like this song. In fact, me and my friends used to make fun of this song. That has since changed. It's a really... the song is a tragedy song. This is a song of sadness, which is hysterical. But, I mean, construction-wise, designed-wise, this is a sorrowful tune. And it's just interesting that this is what they put for the theme of love, aka Rosa's theme, basically. Because, of course, as Jaluta points out, Rosa's trait is the girlfriend, right? But it makes sense because there's so much about Rosa that is a sorrowful beat. Almost every scene and every significant element for Rosa is a sorrowful one, is a sadness scene. It's also got this little bit to help contrast that. Notice that they use the upper type of notes, I forget the terminology, in order to uplift rather than pull down for this section. So there is still positivity to both her and to her relation with Cecil. Is it major and minor? God, I don't remember. Major chords, minor chords. Now, that's alright, but I think the DS, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the DS does a better job with this one. I think this is one of the few ones where I prefer the DS version. Yep, no, I'm right. Notice they actually add an intro. It's one of the few times the DS version actually changes the song. don't like that. I don't like the woodwinds in the DS version. Never have. But you can see how they've actually tried to do something with the song. So I'll give them credit on that front. Yeah, any song where the woodwind plays, I tend to not like it in the DS version. Not like the woodwind, I mean. See, I would have removed the flute entirely from this section if I was working with it. Ignoring the fact that I don't like it, I don't think it fits for this section. Because the whole point is this is the uplifting section, and the woodwind pulls it down again. Continues the tragedy theme, which I think doesn't work for the song. My opinion. It's a shame, because the strings and the harp work very well for that. Let's hear the new version. Or woodwind. Gotta have that woodwind. This is a long one. So I think the woodwind by itself works a lot better, which ties into what Loner just said. Right now it's just the flute and the harp, and that's it. Yeah, see, when everything else pulls in, it just gets a little too piercy. That's awesome. They got rid of the woodwind, just like I said, just like I just said that. Strings take the forefront. Tone goes into the major chord, or whatever it is. Far more positive tone. So far it's been pretty straight, though. Let's see what the second section sounds like. So we get an oboe in here. I could see that, Alex. Absolutely. I think I like this. The tone is far more upbeat than I was expecting. And a different... So that's 3 separate woodwinds we've used for this song so far. I think this is just a straight-up flute here. I'm not sure. I'm not great at identifying instruments. That's why I usually say brass, strings, woodwinds. And then a rejoinder. So I'm not literally crying at this one like I was with the frickin' Red Wings, but this is pretty good. They did some good stuff with this. I can't believe I cried at this frickin' song. So, okay, looped. So we've done that. We've talked to Rosa. We go up to our room. We're all sad. We go out for the prologue. We're going to start this up. This is the original, obviously. This is the theme of Final Fantasy. I personally, admittedly, think of the Prelude theme, you know, as the theme of FF, but this is actually the theme of FF that we've heard all the way up to FF12. Right? Like, you know this tone. I think every FF other than 10 has this at some point throughout it, including at the ending. Usually at the ending. Like FF6, this is at the end. Oh yeah, 2 didn't have it too, you're right. Yeah, this is Final Fantasy. It's part of the intro to FF12, which I'm going to go ahead and admit something embarrassing when FF12 came out, I wasn't really following its development because I was extremely poor and on the verge of poverty-stricken and not really having a good place in my life. So I wasn't really following FF12. So I walked into FF12 incredibly blind. And as a direct consequence, when the intro for FF12 played, this hit me like a ton of bricks. When you heard, you know what I'm talking about? Like the opening cinematic where the FF12 version of the FF theme plays is just, that hit me like a ton of bricks when that came out. Anyways, let's hear the DS version, which is exists, I think. Yep, here it is. So yeah, good song on the SNES, on the original. As usual, the horns just don't work that well on the DS. But not a bad rendition, especially since it sits so much on the strings. And it definitely gets across the intent of this theme, which is the beginning, right? Like the whole point of this tone is we're going out to this great adventure. That's the intent of what it's intending to pull out of you. The beginning, right? Frodo and Sam leaving with Aragorn and Merry and Pippin to go on their journey, right? I would actually agree with that, R. Spruce. I think this is probably one of the better DS songs that we've heard so far today. And they actually do some good stuff with the cymbals on this one. So let's hear the new version. I do not, Alex. So I love what they did with the brass, and I love what they did with the percussion. Yeah, that is very Star Wars. I'm actually very much reminded of FF12's version of this. I wonder if they were just leaning that direction. We'll see what they do with the second section, because it looks like there is one here. I mean, that just sounds like FF12, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, there's something. Is this just a loop? That's a good accompaniment. I almost wish that was part of the first section. Like that extra, like the one trumpet or French horn or whatever that is, adding to it. It sounds very Dragon Quest-y, actually, but that works. And then it loops. But yeah, no, that's good. It's not a huge change. Not a huge change. But now we come to another of my favorite songs of all time. Yes, I have several favorite songs of all time in FF4. Shut up. The Overworld. God, I love this song. Actually has the same tune, the same melody as the Song of Sorrow, by the way. And here's this. I agree, KotOR. I mean, there's other songs that I arguably like better, but this is just, they do so much with this. The harmony, this song actually taught me harmony, no joke. The way the strings perfectly counterbalance the main, whatever that is, the woodwind at the front. Because, and I specifically say harmony because they're not just aping the melody. They're playing their own tune in the background, but at every point it counterbalances the melody. Which I know is exactly what a harmony is supposed to be, but you get why I learned that from this. And there's still, in addition to the tone and the theme, there's this pace to it. I love the pace of FF4's original soundtrack, always have. Every song is beautifully paced with only a couple of exceptions, and this has that we're out going for adventure kind of pace. The whole song does this. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't linger for a second. It's just doing this the entire time. Now, the DS version is... You're going to give me a second because it's in the wrong spot. Might be labeled differently. Label. It's... I mean, it's got to be here somewhere. Right? Oh, God, it's not here. Town, battle, victory, fat chocobo, dungeon, a sub from a pack of 12 ninjas, Damsian, Edward, Ordeal. Is it not here? It might actually not be here. Hang on, let me just independently look this up really quick. Thank you, a pack of 12 ninjas. Very, very, very much. Favorite boss music from any RPG ever? If you'll give me one moment. Oh, did I get rid of that playlist? Oh, looks like I did. That's okay. I know the song. I know another way to find it. My favorite boss song of all time is this. I could probably do an essay on this song. And by the way, it's by Uematsu, not Mitsuda. Anyways, so, before I get off into the weeds, so here. Yep. Once again, I'm willing to give the DS version some slack on this one, because, I mean, listen to it, you know? Once again, focusing on the strengths of the DS sound font, which is the strings, and don't care for that woodwind, I'll be honest, as usual. I feel like the bass beat specifically is actually a little bit too strong here, but it works, right? Again, I'd call this middle good. You know, it's there. I feel it lacks a little bit on a couple of sections, but they do some good stuff with the harp as well, as they're doing right here. By the way, if you know what you want to put that towards a pack of 12 ninjas, please let me know. It's okay, Ross. So I'm actually legitimately debating splitting this into multiple streams. We've got like 40 songs still to go through. But let's hear one of my favorite songs of all time. I'm nervous again. Let's hear the new version. Oh, I like that. It was a good intro. That was a good intro. And they keep having that wind, whatever that is, sound effect. And that's nice. They actually added a second woodwind out of the main one. Looks like that's a chord. You got it, pack of 12 inches. Thank you again. Okay, it's a little 80s-y, but I'm kind of with it. Like the energy noise. I don't even know what that is. The electric piano. It's a completely different tone to the original. This is straight up, you know, explore, right? This is soaring through the air music right here. This is like an airship song. Get some food, Mr. Red. Not sure what I think of the trumpet there, or whatever that is. I do like that they switched it, and now it's not a trumpet. Or whatever it is. Okay, I like this section. Yeah, they played with this one, didn't they? I'm not sure what I think of that. I don't think that's better than the original, but I do like the different take on it. It feels like they're going a completely different direction emotionally with it, trying to make this far more... I said it already, it feels like an airship song. It feels like a song that, you know, which is different. But not better, just different. I like it, obviously. Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this, and they clearly played with it a bit, which I am in favor of. All right, so hang on, real quick. I'm going to be here all day if I do the whole soundtrack, but I kind of want to do the whole soundtrack. So we've got a couple options. We can cut off after I hit a certain song, which I've already decided which one it'll be, and we're going to cut off once I hit that song, because I do have other streams to do today, and I do have other work to get done today. But you want to continue this next week and just carry on where we left off? Because I'm totally down for that. It means I'm going to have to wait another week to listen to the rest of the soundtrack. But I am known for my discipline, so I got that. Okay, so I'm going to go to the boss song. I'll go ahead and tell you. We're going to see, we're going to listen to the main battle, victory, dungeon, you know, the cave, and then boss. Those are the last ones we're going to do for today. So we're going to do that. I'm just going to... And then we'll continue after battle, which I believe is the bomb ring next week. Now, the main reason I want to push to boss is because, in my opinion, well, let me save my thoughts on that. Let's go ahead and get forward. So we get into a random counter. Kane's theme would be F. I guess it plays there. I'm still going to do it in this order. Now, this is a very average song for me. I don't have any particular, this is great or this is awful. This is very run-of-the-mill, but that is kind of FF4 in many ways. It is the seminal Final Fantasy game, and so just having the fight song, I will admit, when I think of generic battle, this is probably the second song that comes to my mind. It's not bad by any measure of the thing. It's just, it's pretty generic. Especially for a song you hear so much of, which, as we've talked about before, there's a whole style of design that goes into a song that you hear a lot of when it comes to game music. So let's hear the DS version really quick. Worse in every way. I mean, listen to this. The bass is too strong. The trumpets are too weak. The percussion emphasizes the wrong things, so half the percussion is too soft, and half the percussion is too loud. The strings are nice, I'll give you that. Because this is another example of strings counterbalancing the main theme. But there's no energy to the brass. There's no oomph to it whatsoever. I agree, Valvatrix, like I said. That's just... It's a complaint I've leveled at several games. So, new version. Get some rock organ in there. Notice they're actually removing some notes to emphasize them more, which that's actually kind of a good idea overall. So instead of a 4-beat, it's a 2-beat, and they hold the second note. Yeah, the catch is, I think I agree with what a couple people say. This is very busy for normal fight. This is more like an individual, like a certain character, like some Ultros' battle. So here, let's hear the second part. Or is there no second part? Oh yeah, like a mid-boss. Okay, it sounds like there's no second part, so that's that. So we fight a random battle, we win! Hang on. We win! As before, when I think of Victory Song, this is what comes to mind. I know that pretty much all the FFs have had a pretty similar fanfare, but this is the specific song when I think Victory. The DS version is not bad. It's very high pace, very high beat, and very high emotion. I don't know what else to call that. Because it really emphasizes the drums in the background. And the trumpets feel like they're constantly pushing to get to the front. So that's whatever. Let's hear the new version. Might be it. Which is fine. This reminds me of FF14's Victory Song, actually. And I guess that's all I have to say about that one. So that's just a pretty straight remix. Nothing really fancy there. But then we go into the dungeon. Now, I happen to really like this dungeon. Now, I feel like I've said this like 75,000 times today. But when I think of dungeon music, when I think of cave, actually, is specifically what I think of. This is what I think of. I just have to find the song. What the heck is it? It should be under I. It should be right. There it is. There's a wonderful explorative but mystery. What he does, he emphasizes... I'm trying to think how to explain this. Effort is made to try and make sure that the undercurrent, which switches, so there's a harp, which is a primary undercurrent, and then sometimes there's a string undercurrent, and sometimes there's a woodwind undercurrent, and it bounces back and forth between the two. 2 years from now, Trax, yeah. And it just helps to keep that tempo of, for lack of a better way to put it, mystery going. Also important for a song you'll be hearing a lot of. Which leads us to the DS version. I know, right, Alex? This one... I want to speak more ill of this, but I can't, because the only reason I don't like this song is because of its utilization in the game. But if you remove the game from it, this is actually probably, I'd say as of right now, the best DS version we've listened to today. It's playing to its strength, the harps, the strings, and it balances the woodwind well enough that it's not predominant. And it does use the like the whispery mystery tone or whatever in the background is done very well. So let's hear the new version. Okay, so now we're in the middle of an ancient ruins of a castle. think I saw Beauty, Belle, down the hallway there. Listen to that! This is straight up mystical. They're doing that thing where they're dragging out the instruments again. Yeah, this is pretty fairy tale. Which is good. Not sure it works for a dungeon theme, but it is good. Is there a second section? There might not be. Looks like there isn't for this one. I mean, yeah, there's the Mist. The Mist, Cave of Mist is the first dungeon in the game. I think I'm with it. I don't think I like it as much as the original, but I'm absolutely with it. And it does very much change the tone a bit. Don't worry, we're not going to hit 4 hours, Houses. Alright, so here's the big one. Let me go ahead and give my speech. I love this boss theme. It's not my favorite boss theme of all time, Haijin Kamio, but it is among my favorite boss themes of all time. Actually, hang on. Stop. Before I do that, I'm going to do this slightly out of order. Because I want to play the DS version first. Which is going to be right here. There it is. That is literally labeled Boss is the name of that song. Da, 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 da. Hang on. Where's... Oh, for God's sakes. This is another one that's not on the list. It is not. Okay, we'll just pull it up individually. Boss theme, please. There we go. Okay. Now, the main reason I'm playing this is not a bad song, but it is probably the biggest, actually, excuse me, the second biggest example of why the DS version soundtrack in general is not as good as the SNES version, in my opinion. Because it just does not have the same kind of impact, pacing, or general oomph to it, right? It does not have... There's nothing to it. So instead what we have is just a high-paced song that has no... I'm saying that wrong. A high-tempo song with no pace to it. There we go. That's how I want to phrase that. And so it's just kind of like, okay. It's not bad, really. I don't think this is a bad song. But it's a little bit too weird, and it's a little bit too slow, and it doesn't have the impact a boss song needs. Now, I know that some people are going to disagree with this, especially KotOR, but in my opinion, the original, whoops, is pretty much how you design a boss song. Are you going to play? Of course you're not. What? There we go. That was weird. And a lot of the strength on this for me sits on how they do, once again, the forefront and the background. One of the things I love about this song is that you can listen to the entire... If you just ignore the front of it. Da-na-na, da-na-na-na, ignore that and listen to the rest of the song. There's still a whole other song behind it. And it's actually... So we've got the main strings up front. We've got horns on the side and strings on the side. And these horns and strings are the harmony. And at every point, they push the melody. And it's got, and again, unlike the previous one, while this is reasonably high tempo, it also has the pace the previous lacked. And yeah, the bass is not too overpowering, the percussion has more impact to it, the brass works much better, the strings actually feels like it's a single punch rather than a slow thing, etc., etc. Yeah, so there's a lot of energy to that song, and that's pretty much exactly why I like it. So... So this is a Kingdom Hearts song. It's maintaining the pace which is the most important thing I heard. The most important thing I need to know. I like the distortion guitar in the background. Yeah, the rock organ was good. They keep bouncing around between a single, like a violin or something, and then a full string section. This sounds like a Sonic piece right here. I like that. It maintains the pace and the energy, which is the most important thing to this song, in my opinion. And the biggest thing most remixes fail, including the DS version. And it adds some extra layers. It doesn't look like there's a second section, which is a shame. But yeah, this is a song you listen to while you're sprinting. Not running, sprinting. Ironically, in-game, that probably wouldn't work because a lot of these bosses take a while, and you don't want to be listening to this. It's a sprint song. You're supposed to be like, yeah, and then it's supposed to be over in a couple minutes. You know, you don't want to be listening to this for 6 minutes while you're slogging through, whatever. But I like that. I like how they brought in the rock guitar in the background. I like how they brought in the organ. I like how they, if you're paying attention, the bass gets louder. And then softer. Like right now, you can barely hear the bass in the background. But for that, sorry. So for listen how the bass is way more up front for this one. You hear that? You can hear it right there up front, right? But then when it goes back to the first stanza or whatever it is, much more in the background. Ooh, that, I like that. Yeah, well, listen, Micromono, I'm already trying to avoid copyright as much as I can, so I kind of have to talk as much as I can because they're absolutely taking down videos with these songs in them. So, suck it! That is done. We're gonna be done. I have other things to do. It's already 1. I think. Oh no, it's only after that. But it's been 3 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and chop this off in local recording.